technical difficulties with the bullshit. Dealing with Grand Theft Auto. About Super Saturn like that. Just bullshitting with them. I really don't know.
I would have to use something with a little different texture. Made famous by if you feel like saying along with me, please do so. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. Oh, happy day. When Jesus walks, yeah.
I'm trying to hear my voice. You can hear my voice. That's it. Oh, there you go. I hear it now. I'm back. Yes. Grand Theft Auto 5 the game. Boy, you didn't get you one of them trucks. That's not the Tacoma, because that truck don't blow up. I better drive my Tacoma now. Gotta be missing the move.
Home screen.
tHE.
Text. Text to speech unavailable here.
tHE.
all my good people, we talking about that. Fuck it, truth, period, fuck all that bullshit. And I'm doing the damn thing. I'm doing Cold Day for you on one broadcast. And Jaden Offering is the truth coming out of a woman in the form of a baby, because a baby is born here as pure as the driven snow could be pure, as far as what the baby knows when getting here. It's basically nothing but what her mama been feeding her. Period. Kind of us start knowing some shit, stop believing all this bullshit. Somebody go on his phone running, do what I know to do. So at the top is I see you news. Weasel News. You, me, we, Jaden Austin's news station. On Grand Theft Auto, funky ass TV. All I can say to most people that's on this game, especially you kids that shouldn't be on this game, but your mom and your dad don't give a fuck about you. So that's why you on this game. And the truth is the truth, period. Fuck all that bullshit. They don't want me doing too much. But really, they fucking with your internet service and everything, with your phones and everything, to make you think that 5G gonna be better. That's gonna kill us quicker. As the conscious thinking people. boy gang know we doing some bullshit. And no favor. Say, put your truck in the game. I mean, I can truck you too.
situation regarding the FEMA barges coming to Port Arthur. Mayor Derek Freeman posted a clarification to the temporary housing situation regarding the FEMA barges coming to Port Arthur. There will be 2 FEMA barges, which will hold 300 Arthur. On his Facebook, clarifying about the barges that will be used to house displaced residents. Looks like a jail. That looks like jail. Take a look at that. It looks like jail. And they're floating on water? FEMA barges? You gotta be kidding me.
Shelter is hard enough. But at this moment, right now you're talking about putting me on a barge.
Gwendolyn Donahue is not happy with the temporary housing coming to Port Arthur. She was rescued from her home during Harvey and is...
Let's go back, because we know exactly what that is. It's a prison. That's a FEMA prison on a damn barge. You go in there, you ain't coming out.
I'm not a fish. I'm not a crab. I'm not a shrimp. Because I don't know nothing about being on a boat.
Mayor Freeman says the barges are expected to arrive in 2 days. But County Judge Jeff Brannick says other options are being looked at.
This is what they think about humanity. This is what they think about people. They never gave a fuck about the people. They've been thinking or plotting on this agenda for a very long time. All of them Jade Hell drills, martial law drills. I mean, you guys wait too long, it's going to be too late. And we're all going to be fighting to save our lives, our kids' lives. You guys better wake up. Snap back into reality. Shit ain't sweet. It ain't sweet at all. And when they get done with all these puppets, because that's what these motherfuckers right here is.
Yep,
Fucking puppets. When they get done with all these puppets,
I'm killing bitches too.
they'll be gone too.
Yep, I'm killing bitches
As
too.
well, FEMA and the Texas Division of Emergency Management will give options like mobile home trailers and shelters.
So look, fraud, emergency management agency. That's what they are. It's a fraud, emergency management.
This as well. What can you tell us?
Let me introduce you to Danielle here. Danielle, you just arrived. Share with us how you were rescued.
Some guys had called our phone and asked us where we were because we was waiting for the police for like 36 hours and they never came. And we was waiting at the home. We did the white flags and everything and nobody came. But then
all over
somebody called the phone after we decided to leave the house and we had walked to the gas station with the kids. And then they had called and came and picked us up.
I ain't gonna say white
But we had been there like
neighborhood.
5 days with no food and no lights and nobody came. Like nobody came.
Now you're with your children. We've heard of stories of mothers trying to save their children from the rushing waters. Can you tell us how that was?
4 feet of water to go get them food on the first day. Yeah, that's a lot of shit. But y'all sit here, y'all trying to interview people during their worst times. Like, that's not the smartest thing to do. Like, people are really breaking down and y'all sitting here with cameras and microphones trying to ask us what the fuck is wrong with us.
I'm so
and
sorry.
you're really trying to understand with the microphone still in my face, with me shivering cold, with my kids wet, and you still putting the microphone in my face.
Sorry.
Rosa Flores, it sounds like you've got a very upset family there. We're going to take a break from that, and we'll get back to you later on. Rosa Flores and Houston Forge, thank you.
This from Houston, Texas, y'all.
Let them boys go. Yeah.
supposed to up, see? Hey, listen, you supposed to hand up here when we do nothing. You supposed to hand up. Who did that? You know, she did that.
Now to a controversial bill resurfacing in Congress. The FEMA camp bill allows the government to run at least 6 military installations when a national emergency is declared. These emergency centers would be run by FEMA under the command of the Secretary of Homeland Security. 2 years ago, a similar bill was presented in Congress, but it didn't go anywhere over concerns that the broad language can lead to sweeping, unchecked government power. Now, another version is back up for debate involving a civil liberties activist and blogger. Joining us now for more. Welcome there, Mr. English.
Hello.
So it didn't pass the first time around. Why was there resistance to it?
Well, a fellow by the name of Lee Rogers began writing about it and raising some alarmist concern over the broad sweeping powers it would give the Department of Homeland Security. And it kind of caught fire and just died.
It just died because people were afraid of what this could lead to.
Exactly. There were concerns that there were parallels to the Japanese internment facilities in World War II that we saw. And for practical purposes, the financial mess was going on and other things to be dealt with at the time.
Okay, so there were concerns over the vague language. It didn't pass. Now there's this new version of the bill. What's changed?
Well, they took out the vague language so that the centers are specifically set up to house, shelter, even educate people for extended periods of time, but they are limited to that specific purpose.
Okay, so of course this legislation is meant to be enacted in the event of an emergency. But what exactly does that mean? What is the definition of emergency, especially when it comes to this legislation? When would it be enacted?
Sure, we have to go back to 1988 to the Stafford Act vote to actually get the definition of emergency, and this covers things like tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, natural disasters, but it also gives the president to declare an emergency to avert a catastrophe, which raises the issue of preemptive.
In case he feel like.
Okay, but there's also this is.
If he feel like
to mobilize
it's a possibility
to have this
that the storm is going to flood, he can call a state emergency and put everybody in concentration camp.
And that's where some of the concern for civil liberties activists comes because it's a slippery slope. Once the government has this power and all these centers are set up, and it's at least 6, maybe more, probably more, there's a real potential for the abuse of power here.
Okay, interesting. You know, we have this map that shows how the U.S. would be divided in the event of an emergency, if we can pull that out there. There it is. So this is how the U.S. will be divided into districts. You see 10 of them there.
You're going to Social Security card.
According to the
now match up with the letters, I guarantee you.
Emergency center establishment. Can you describe what this map is? What exactly does that mean? I mean, it doesn't really make sense in terms of states as we know them. What is this classification system? What are the purposes?
It doesn't look like the map that you and I saw in elementary school.
No.
Effectively, the U.S. has been cordoned off into these different districts, and so these new emergency centers will be spread out throughout the United States in most of these eventually.
And it gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
Okay, I want to go and...
You damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
They just took some people off the boat, and they took them to Tidwell Road, and the buses were taking them from the boat to the Tidwell Road Walmart Supercenter right there in Jersey Village, and there's other ones that are being used too. So there you have it. there's your temporary FEMA camp.
National Weather Service says that parts of Texas might be uninhabitable for weeks, even potentially months after the hurricane. Are you prepared? Is FEMA prepared to be there for months on end?
If you're pathological, there's no cure for that, folks.
Remember what the FEMA cancer we were talking about? This event is real that they caused, and there's real people suffering, and you're not looking and you're not seeing that part.
So let's go take a look at what they did to this neighborhood Walmart. And the way it's set up to you is perfect. Look at, they got a security, why would you have a security camera right here? Why is this needed? What? This obviously looks like some sort of an entrance.
Only saying on the mainstream media, all you're seeing is a bunch of mocking.
FEMA's going to be there for years. This disaster is going to be a landmark event. We're already pushing forward forces to be on the ground.
So as you see, this is the parking lot. It's where they're going to be busting you in. It's right off the 101.
We're setting up and gearing up for the next couple of years.
Last night I dreamt about how things were.
So the citizens are saying re-education.
In fact, underneath the bridge, and they were loading up with as many people. It's got to be dozens of people in the back of that thing. They take them to a nearby Walmart, and then the Walmart, they take them to a nearby Walmart, and then the Walmart is where, I guess, metro buses or school buses will take them to the shelter. The question is, what shelter are they taking them to? The question is, what shelter are they taking them to? Because I heard Tom say GRV is overcrowded and or not overcrowded, but at the capacity they had planned for. So gosh, I certainly have that question. I don't know if we've answered it.
That's what you mean when you say disorganized organization, because there is at least some kind of system. I mean, earlier we've seen reporters have situations where people come out of water like this, and it's late at night, and they're wet, and with their children and their pets, and they really have nowhere to go. At least they have a system where they're taking them to a Walmart where they can be inside and wait and figure out what comes next.
Absolutely. And I think the people I talked to, all, with the exception of one, they all were eager to go wherever the truck would take them. Interestingly enough, hours ago, as dusk set in, the Coast Guard helicopters and the National Guard helicopters had pulled away. I hear one. There's no way we can see it. It's too far off, but I heard it pass over, a military helicopter. I had talked to a sheriff's deputy earlier. They said they had a quadriplegic who was stuck in his home and obviously needed immediate rescue, but and they were going to try and do that one with a chopper. I don't know if that's what we're hearing, but I know that was something that they were discussing.
Well, Ted,
it just continues to be this groups of people walking.
Oh, as we watch these pictures, it's just, you know, what this has turned into is a humanitarian crisis here, because clearly when you have a city that's paralyzed, and then you have tens and thousands of people needing to be rescued, and so many more at the shelters, and we're looking at pictures like this, even on the third day, and already approaching our fourth day, we are dealing with the humanitarian crisis. It's only going to get worse, because where do all these people go? Are there enough shelters? What about food? What about clothing? What about shelter?
Open up more churches.
Right.
That's certainly a big resource we have in this community. A lot of churches that hopefully will step up.
Any thoughts on that, Ted?
Well, I think we'll get to the point. Well, I think Argentina will get to the point where I think we'll realize that we cannot shelter this many people in a city even the size of Houston because of the crisis that we are dealing with.
Yeah.
That our resources will be so strapped that we will likely have to accept other people's offer to shelter some of the people that are neediest.
Harvey's aftermath as they try to go back to normal. We take a closer look at some of the complications people are facing and how you can get assistance. Good evening to all of you. Welcome to 12 News Tonight. I'm Vanessa Holmes. And I'm Dejani Garrison. Thanks so much for joining us. In Jefferson County, temporary housing is on the way for residents displaced from their homes. FEMA will be providing disaster assistance starting tomorrow. Our Jackie Massey is live at the Red Cross Center at Thomas Jefferson Middle School in Port Arthur with more. Jackie. Vanessa and Dejani, there's about 200 people inside this Red Cross shelter behind me at the Thomas Jefferson Middle School, but many of them may be moving soon because FEMA will be providing temporary housing for them, and many inside that I spoke to say this is a good thing. Many residents are displaced from their homes, like Terry Patio. She had several inches of water in her home. About 15,000 homes out of 81,000 in Jefferson County received major damage from Harvey, according to County Judge Jeff Brannick. In the county, only 18,000 homes have flood insurance. insurance. Port Arthur Mayor Derek Freeman took to social media, announcing on Facebook that FEMA will be making disaster assistance available tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I know a lot of people would really love that. I know I love it. I'm ready for that.
According to Judge Brannick, 2 barges of apartments, which can hold about 300 people each, will be transported to Jefferson County for people who are living in shelters or who are evicted from their apartments. For people who are living in shelters or who are evicted from their apartments. For people who are living in shelters or who are evicted from their apartments. This is a picture of what the barges could look like, and Brannick says they could be located near the port of Port Arthur.
I got displaced too. Yes, me. I got displaced too because of the flood and because I have my dog and a whole lot of other stuff. And I'm here with this nice gentleman and there's some other people. It was a whole lot of people there, probably about 200-300 people. And there's like a long line of people over there just now getting here. And there are thousands of people in here, but I can't come and show you for public, like, privacy reasons. But I can't come and show you for public, like, privacy reasons. But I can't come and show you for public, like, privacy reasons. And Sergeant Sanchez of HPD just got them threatening to arrest people if they wanted something to eat. Now, members of the Red Cross are supposedly trying to find food because they can't find it. However, members of certain police departments are getting steaks and hamburgers and fresh food. Well, mind you, this is actually food from yesterday. So, and they have like tubs and tubs and tubs of the food, but they won't feed the people. Like this shit is real now.
Hey folks, and welcome to another video from plaintruth.info. I'm here in Houston. Started to see some of the disaster, some of the evidence. Got in yesterday. Talked to people. I'm heading out to see if the dams they were blown or spilled over after the hurricane to validate what the gentleman from the Arkansas Ozarks had come out and said was going on. Tomorrow I'll be heading out to Port Douglas. Later today I'm going to the animal shelters to see about dogs. So it's going to be a very fun day here in Houston. Talked to the desk as soon as I came in here at the hotel, and they said it was horrible. And the lady said there were dams that were released in the Sugarland area where I'll be going today that were released after the hurricane and flooded out areas that were not hit when the original hurricane came over. I also spoke with people on the way down. They said it was not a hurricane. It just rained like they'd never seen it. It just came down. Same thing we experienced in California this winter, the greatest rain, snow ever. The rains did not come in. They were over us, and they just released. This was a very isolated storm. It only covered 39 counties, 2.5 hours away in Waco, Texas. They hardly felt a thing. They're just concerned about gas prices. Same thing in Dallas, same thing in Fort Worth. Gas prices was all they talked about. They had no idea what went on here in Houston, and it's still going on. So I'm going to go out and get it. But before I leave, this whole FEMA ship camp, I've got more evidence on that, first person accounting, and I'll be going out there tomorrow to see what I can validate about that. But I want to get this vid doc out today, and I'll try and get a report out each day. Well, before we get into the beginning of the documentation, that looks like there might be actually FEMA ships that are parked off in Port Arthur that many were loaded into. I want to get through some of these news stories real quick. Summer like weekend ahead for New Jersey as forecasters track Hurricane Maria. Maria's moving off the East Coast. They say it's nothing yet, but Jose is still sitting off there. But I want to show you this picture. Hang on a second. So this is from earth.nullschool.net, and I suggest everybody just keep checking this out at least a day, a couple times a day. But here is pictures of Hurricane Maria that's moved off the Caribbean, and now they're saying it's going to be parked 500 miles off the coast for the next week of the East Coast. And here's still Jose still parked off the coast. But what I want to bring your attention to, folks, which is not on anybody's screen, nobody's talking about it. We've been watching this thing for days, and this thing is just exploded in size. This is up off of Greenland. Look at this thing sitting up there, folks. Look at this compared to the other two. It's just massive in size. And they've got it parked way up above Nova Scotia up there, as the picture will bring in a little clear. But look at the relative size compared to Jose. So keep an eye on that. All right, so other things, let's get back to the news stories here. So freedom is a myth. We're all prisons in the panopticon. You should Google what the panopticon is, but we're being owned, folks. One of the themes that they're coming out with all these hurricanes is there was no power, there was no power, there was no power. A couple of previous videos I documented how they're going to space-based or high-altitude-based, if you don't want to use the word space, solar mirrors, lasers, RF frequencies down to solar collectives in the desert, and power is going to be worldwide, one source from space. So that's why they're saying power's out. Florida's solar panels. We've got earthquakes again in Mexico from 4 people down there. Another earthquake hit. Another earthquake just hit, 0.6, 0.2 earthquake strikes off the coast of Japan. And then we just had one I just saw today. California just got hit with a 5.7 earthquake as well. So this is the ring of fire that is being fired up. Now they can use HARP technology for tomography for penetrating earthquakes. HARP is not used for steering weather, folks. It's the Doppler and next generation X-ray. DHC, Department of Homeland Security, police millions to ticket and prosecute murderers. They're federalizing the government, folks. Prosecutors unveil full details of Anthony Weiner as in Dick pedophile. That's how they use the names on people. Nestle makes billions bottling water, pays nothing for it, nothing new here. Mercedes plots to Tesla attack with $1 billion in U.S. electric push. So they're going to go to electric cars and driverless cars. Check this out. What do they need cars anymore for, folks? What do they need cars anymore? So what did they just destroy? And there's video footage here. I'm going to try and go to this raceway here where they're parking all these cars. I mean, this drone footage, I'm not going to do it, but this drone footage just shows tens of thousands of cars that are parked in these raceways now because they have no place else to put them. I estimated 500,000 vehicles. This is how they get rid of the refineries. This is how they get rid of the cars. It's geoengineering. By the way, this storm, it's really important to understand that this storm was in only 39 counties, and like I said before, no one else felt it. It was not felt up north, it was not felt to the west, and so nobody has that in my backyard feeling except the people in Houston. So I just want to make that clear. I'm also going to try and find out a little bit more about the Walmart closings. If you notice here, look at all the Walmart closings in the United States. Look where they're all clustered around the hurricane alleys here, on the floodplains. And we got a couple in San Francisco, a couple in
You planned all this shit.
New York.
Yeah, I'm gonna chip up now.
Chicago, but are these the FEMA centers? We're going to look and find out.
You planned all this shit.
Finally, I wanted to show you this article here. This is September 22nd, yesterday article. Some green leaders get on board with geoengineering, all these. And this is from September 22nd. Stop moving. This is from September 22nd. Green leaders get on board with geoengineering. And here you have, I don't know what kind of language that is behind him. It's kind of like Buzz Aldrin. This is the 2016, some foreign conference here. University of Cambridge, Polar Ocean Physics Group. A number of climate experts think we need to employ geoengineering techniques. Anybody want to call and wake them up? We've been doing this for 40 years. But here's what I found interesting. Not only talking about capturing CO2, but another potential right here. Here we go, backing it up. Another potential geoengineering save involves unleashing a fleet of small spraying ships around the world's coastlines that would pipe ocean water hundreds of feet skyward, spraying clouds with salt crystals to reflect more sunlight upwards and away from Earth's surface. So now they're validating, now that we're disclosing the ocean-based water vapor machines, they're coming out with them, folks. They're coming out and saying that whether they're real or not, they got some other technology like the hurricane, from above the hurricanes, being able to pulse it with their lasers and their space mirrors up above. We don't know. And here they're talking about it now, just yesterday. So the whole meme of ocean-based water vapor machines is now being played out, that the alternative news started bringing it up.
Jesus put in God you trust. And y'all trust that God too much. And it's all bullshit.
Other displaced residents like Patricia Mooney say they would not mind staying on a barge.
Nice place, you know, to regroup, you know, get yourself together, you know. Come on, that's a fucking prison. You must be a paid opposition to say some shit like that. Don't nobody want to go to jail. And nobody want to be in prison. You can't possibly tell me that you are okay with that, going to prison.
Going to prison. And you ain't do nothing to go to prison.
You ain't even done nothing to go, so why would you want to send yourself? You ain't even done nothing to go, so why would you want to send yourself to prison?
Nah.
Who the fuck does that?
Thank you.
Give it a try.
Well, no, that's your problem.
Mayor Freeman says 3 meals a day will be offered at the barges along with lunch.
3 meals a day and also with the laundry. Yep, that's prison. That's
prison,
jail.
baby.
3 meals a day and they'll
prison, baby.
give you their do your laundry. And it's going to be some stripes. It ain't going to be your day clothes. Or your outside clothes. Your street clothes.
And satellite TV. Officials are all...
They got satellite TV. Man, fuck that satellite TV. That TV is fake. They ain't gonna show you no real shit. They ain't gonna show you why you being distracted and watching the fake shit. They gonna be doing what they've been doing. How you think they got away with all this?
All this bullshit, yeah.
The mass people.
With the fucking TV.
Anything that they can possibly get them to divert their attention to, no matter what it is, and that's exactly what they've done. Called us slipping.
Yeah.
So looking into separating the men and women inside, and we'll also have security in.
So now you're gonna be separated.
Nah.
From your
loved ones.
So if you have a wife or you have a husband, you have kids.
That ain't gonna happen.
My question is.
That ain't gonna happen.
What are they gonna do with your kids?
Nah. Gotta tell you, they gonna make soldiers out there.
Gonna go?
Gonna make soldiers out there.
You gonna put your fucking kids on there? You gonna allow them to take your kids or force you to take your kids on there? No.
We in trouble.
You won't be taking your kids.
We in trouble, people.
You ain't coming off. If you go in any of these government agency facilities, you are not coming out. They're going to put your ass somewhere where you cannot communicate with nobody, so nobody knows what's going on. You notice they ain't doing no coverage on Texas. They ain't doing no coverage on Florida.
Nope.
They ain't doing no coverage. Because why? Because they are doing their dirt.
They doing their dirt.
They ain't going to cover
and that's why I say they can cut the signals because I already saw they fucking killed my phone. My phone wasn't working for me to dial out.
Go to a FEMA, acting like they own someone.
Yep.
They don't own anyone.
They don't own no one.
They don't have the right to tell nobody where they need to go, regardless if they was homeless or not.
Nope. And I'm gonna definitely show you people what's really real tomorrow.
These things look like a jail inside. Port Arthur mayor clarified temporary housing situation for city. This guy right here, Eric Freeman, the mayor, posted a clarification to the temporary.
For all you celebrities donating money and sending, we appreciate you. We appreciate you, but that ain't helping the people. You really want to help the people? Find somebody who live in Houston, Texas, and talk to them people and get them people some help. Help families. Start one family at a time. I don't care where you start, on the rich side or the poor side. Everybody needs help. This ain't about white and black. This ain't about rich and poor. But everybody out here is messed up.
It's about people, baby.
If you really want to know how to help these people, why is Home Depot and Lowe's? I just want to know why Home Depot and Lowe's ain't donating.
None.
Okay?
None.
About $1 million to donate. Somebody put $1 million over there at Home Depot and open up the doors and let these people start getting these walls and pieces of roofs and everything they need to fix their house. Why the people ain't over here at the schools? They said time my schools reopening. Now you want to send my kids in there with some more. Because you ain't changed out none of this sheetrock. You know what I'm saying? I'm really upset about how they doing these people out here, man. This is really hot. They playing the people. They making millions. know people that's displaced that need help. I got homeboys out here. Dale Harris is married in the hotel, helping with his house. You won't know Uncle Boyd in the hood, 80 years old, his roof just fell in. Somebody put a roof on there. It'll take $5,000, $6,000. Send that man $5,000, $6,000 and talk to him on the phone. He over there speaking. You know what I'm saying? Don't keep donating your money to these people. Your money, you giving your money away. These people gonna be driving Rolls Royces in a month. These people, it's gonna burn up out of Houston. It ain't gonna never be the same down here. I can tell you that now. All you people like to come to Houston party, Houston's not the place to party no more. Because all these people are displaced. And they're not going to rebuild these people homes. They're not over here trying to help nobody. They collecting money. But where they at? People is going to the neighborhoods trying to help people tear out their walls and stuff. Give some money while these people tear it out. Give them some money to put some sheetrock up so they can go back home. They don't need to be in no flavor.
Nah.
They need to be in their house.
Need to be in their house.
This is running behind, man. They up here lying.
Yeah,
now they
yeah.
talking about it ain't that much chemical in there. They lying.
Yeah, they lying.
Police in the hospital.
Lying. They lying. They lying. They not only the shit is in the air, they put the shit in the flood water. See, because they created fucking diseases that they put in the water for the people to get, so they can give the people the fucking, man, this is some bullshit. Cause and fucking effect. They causing the fucking effects. Let me tell you something about Mother Earth. Mother Earth been raped and done so fucking wrong to the point where Mother Earth don't even react no motherfucking more like she's supposed to. We don't even much know what's real or what they the fuck doing with motherfucking nature's work, man. It's some bullshit. I live here in Houston, Texas, in Harris motherfucking County. When everybody was running the fuck around trying to get the fuck out of here, I told the motherfuckers, one thing about life, you can't be afraid of fucking death or you not living fucking life. When it's your time to motherfucking go, you can't run, duck, or hide from that shit because it's your time to fucking go. The divine creator love unconditionally, the feeling is real in each and every one of us individually at one fucking time.
All the people who donate that money, I don't trust none of them but J.J. Watt, because if I believe the man gonna go and help build some homes. All these other people donate money, Red Cross, then you take your clothes down there to Goodwill, then they turn around selling the clothes. I could have sold those out there clothes when I was looking for money. You know what I'm saying? This is crazy.
That's crazy.
Instead of people clothes that they donate, and people need clothes, where they get money from to buy these clothes? This is crazy. I just don't understand it, man. It's a scam, and I'm telling y'all, y'all better wake up. Because y'all going to be left high and dry. All you people don't have no homes, I don't know where y'all going to be. Red Cross going to be out of here. FEMA, all of them going to be out of here. And they going to be somewhere each state and laugh and driving business and wrong saying, clean up. I'm telling you, you better get real and wake up. This is a scam. These people is not out here to help people. And all you FEMA people talking about y'all, they ain't giving nobody no jobs, they're spending this and all this here. This is Houston, Texas. Our city high felons. They give you a chance. And for the city workers and ex-felons. Thank you to the city behind felons. People want to change. People go down there to the penitentiary, get out, they get jobs, they got houses, and now they misplaced. You tell me they don't get no job? What you expect them to do? What you expect them to do? This is crazy. This is the biggest scam in American history down here going on in Houston, Texas right now. On my side, I already know they got chemicals in there. They already, I've been telling y'all for 2 days the plant was going to blow up. That ain't going to be the only one blow up. They're going to have some more spills. They letting that stuff loose. Pipes is busted. They're not telling you about these plants. This stuff is in the water. People walking through the water. Watch they be sick. This is crazy. This is a scam. These people knew
Population control is real, people. They get ready to eliminate us, people. Like I said once before, slavery is going on right now in a different way. Hiroshima did happen. We dropped the bomb on Hiroshima twice. That killed millions of people. They saying that it only killed thousands. Man, it killed millions of people.
Why they ain't got Home Depot? Donate your money to Home Depot and make them open the doors down here.
It's bad, people. What's going on?
Divulge who they are. I've been through a lot of things, even with the open carry movement, that have risked my life over the years, but I'm already a dead man. And I know I'm going to die one day, and my soul's redeemed, so it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is doing the right thing and letting people know what's actually going on.
Suffering, man.
The next morning, we got up out of the militia compound, and we started going on rescue missions, and for whatever reason, the places that they sent me to had already been evacuated, and the water had started receding, and we weren't actually able to get our boat in the water. We heard that this was like the day after the hurricane, and the hurricane was moving north at this point in time up into the Beaumont, Port Arthur area, and moving up the coast from Houston at that point in time. And so my roommate and I decided to leave that area and start heading north, because we knew that there was going to be more rescues. We knew that there was going to be more things to do as the storm was flooding people out. And I got a phone call from somebody, a message from somebody, and I was given some opportunity to help us with some things that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. So we joined up with the Cajun Navy and the Texas Navy in the Woodlands, I believe, which is a suburb of Houston. And I'll take a drink here. We immediately were, the militia guys left. They decided to leave. We decided to go do our own thing. And we met up with the Cajun and Texas Navy guys. When I got to the Woodlands, I think it was called the Crossing Church in the Woodlands is where they were set up. I could tell they had a very well put together rescue mission going on with lots of computers and maps and other things, and they were dispatching people to many different locations in different areas. The guys that were running this were obviously pros at what they were doing, and obviously had connections with many other people, because as soon as they gave us a chance to get our boats out there and start going on rescue missions, we heard that there was some really bad looting going on. One of the stories that we heard of was like Grand Theft Auto. Somebody was on a jet ski with pistols in both hands, like firing their guns into people's homes in the Katy area. And DPS showed up. That's Department of Public Safety. For those of you who don't understand, that is basically the Highway Patrol of Texas. And they were putting a DPS agent on every boat and every car going out to do these rescues. The DPS agent that rode with me for several hours was a member of CID, which is Criminal Investigation Detectives or Criminal Investigation Units. And they wanted to make sure that we had our guns with us. So I had a Highway Patrol chick in my car as we were dispatched to go out, and was told to grab my AK-47 and have my pistol on my hip because of what they were involved in. Now, at the time, I didn't realize why DPS was being put on every boat and every truck. And over the next several hours, while they were with me in my vehicle and questioning them, I was messing with her bad. I was talking about taxation being theft, and about, nonviolent crimes and all this other stuff. But all joking aside, I always have my ways of finding out information. Never underestimate my ability to find shit out. So I got an inside track of what was going on. They sent me to Kingsland, I forget the town. It was the same place I had been earlier that morning with the militia, and was basically a dead end because they had already pulled everybody out, and that area had already been basically taken care of. So we were rerouted to the Katy area, and the message that the DPS agent got and informed us of was they were going to be blowing the dam in Katy, Texas, and that was the message we got, and that there was an emergency to go and get people out. We made our way down to Katy, Texas, and when we got there, we were stopped because they had finally blocked the roads down, and we were just off of I-10 where they had FEMA, National Guard, DEA, FBI, Secret Service. They had emergency management from Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and others there. And it was a big clusterfuck of everybody sticking their thumbs up each other's asses because they were just running around like trup, 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 not doing anything but stroking each other. And I've got to say this the way I say it, so I'm sorry if I'm rude in the words that I'm using, but it's just the way that it's coming out. So we got stopped at the area where FEMA and National Guard was setting up at this mall. The mall was, I forget the name of the mall. It was like Alumni Mall, or it was something like that. And they were going to use I-10 as a makeshift dam. And they had trucks there full of gravel, and they were shutting down the highway because they were going to use I-10 as a buffer from flooding Houston again. But they were going to release the water. I was told they were going to blow the dam. And in doing so, they were going to flood this Katy area again and hope that I-10 was able to keep the wash from happening, and probably keeping I-10 from being washed out. There's pictures and video on my Facebook of me there at the FEMA Resource Center where all these federal agents were setting up, and at this point in time, it was all hands on deck. So the reason that all these federal agents were there, whether it was DEA, FBI, CIA, or whoever, and they were running around with their badges and their shirts on so I could identify the different alphabet agencies that were there, was because it was all hands on deck at this point in time. I later found out that even though we were stopped at this FEMA Resource Center and this government makeshift resource center at the mall, and let me tell you, and you'll get part of this out of my story, that they do use malls, they do use Walmarts, they do use these other places to set up FEMA and to create FEMA centers in these natural disasters. I saw it firsthand. Not a conspiracy. We later found out that the reason DPS was with us and wanted to make sure we were armed was because at least one of those gun stores had been taken over, and there was some pretty hardcore gang members that were using the arms that they had gotten to go and loot and rob people. They were stealing boats from people in the Cajun Texas Navy. They were dressing up like rescuers, and when people would answer their door to get rescued, they were robbing them and going in their homes. There were people that were being shot and murdered. And they put the DPS agents and detectives on our boats and on our cars because they were hunting gang members. Like I said, the immediate hours and few days after a disaster, it's lawlessness, it's shit at the fan, and there is no law and order, and things get crazy. And that's another reason why you want to be prepared and have arms in your home and everywhere else.
Man, shut up. You about killing people.
Hey guys, I have tried to make this video several times and it just keeps getting really long and stretched out, so let me try to be brief. There will be a couple links below. As you all know, the National Defense Authorization Act is still pending, but it's probably going to be passed because it's the National Defense Authorization Act. Because if we don't pass that, the troops are going to starve and not have guns, and we got to declare war on America with it. It's the easiest way. It's probably going to pass. The president said he's going to veto it. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. This is the kicker. You know, Occupy Wall Street, released via Alexander Higgins' blog, has now been declared a terrorist organization. So, to every one of you occupiers, welcome now to the same category that the Tea Party, militia groups, 3%ers, Oath Keepers, and I can't tell you, I saw when I was a soldier, I saw a list of what they call terror organizations. Now, it's huge. Essentially, all you have to do is disagree with the government. Even Christians are now wrapped in it. So welcome, Occupy Wall Street. You just joined the majority of America and becoming terrorists. I don't know that it's an absolute or that his blog is right, but it just seems to be par for the course and makes a lot of sense. But here's the kicker. I was just talking with a friend of mine, former Special Forces. For those of you that don't know, I was a member of Army Psychological Warfare for a period of about 5 years in the Army Reserve, and I served a tour in Afghanistan. As such, it was a privilege to do so because I got to work with the best of the best. And I didn't have to go through a whole lot of training in order to do it, but I got to work with Special Forces, with Navy SEALs, with Army Rangers, with Air Force parajumpers, and you just go down the list. FBI, OGA, CIA, got to work with all of them at some point. So this is what my buddy tells me. Says an acquaintance of his at Fort Lewis, Washington, well, there's been a lot of talk amongst these Special Forces teams, a lot of talk. And it's been about Osama bin Laden and his killing. Now, if you're like me, you know that Osama bin Laden has already been dead and nobody killed him because he wasn't alive to kill in the first place. You also know that dumping his body in the ocean was not in proper accordance with Muslim law or tradition. And the story the federal government told us changed 4 times. So they've been having a lot of discussion amongst themselves and with Navy SEALs and et cetera, trying to figure out what actually went down. Why is this big lie being told? And the thing that my friend is telling me, and it's hearsay, but it's a good source, he's telling me that, they're all realizing this giant lie, this has some play. There's a reason they told this giant lie. But since it was a giant lie, they're just reaching out there trying to figure out why. And what I really like to hear is this. These special operators are very, very smart. You don't even get considered to go in unless you have basically an intelligence score of about 90%. And when I say 90%, I mean that means 1 in 10 people on planet generally might be smarter than you. Outside of that, you're smarter than 9 out of 10. That's what it takes just to be considered. So these very smart people are reaching out and trying to find answers, and because they're trying to find answers based on a big lie, there are none. So guess which direction they've all started to go? They all started looking back to the beginning of this whole war on terror, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the war in Yemen, the war in Libya. The now operators in Uganda at the foothills of Ethiopia. They want to know why. But where did it all start? It all started on 9/11. And any smart person, especially somebody that's smarter than 90% of the people around them, can look back now on the evidence because Niels Harrit of Copenhagen University has a peer-reviewed paper, scientific fact, that nanothermate that's only made by 2 companies in the United States was found in every single sample of the dust in the buildings. Architects and engineers for 9/11 truth just keeps getting bigger and has mathematical, scientific fact that the entire story is a lie. So these very smart people are starting to look back that direction and realize it was a big lie. Now, I brought up the FEMA camps and Occupy Wall Street for a reason, because there is concern that the federal government's going to come out and try to round you up at some point if you disagree. Lock you in a camp and do this the same way Hitler and Stalin, and this has been done over and over and over again. It would just be history repeating itself.
Because, like I said before, we live in the circle of life. What goes around comes around if the people don't put their foot down on the bullshit. See, we're allowing the bullshit to come across because we was taught to believe in bullshit. We was taught to be stupid ass fucking sheeple. Not the motherfucking smart ass people who make the world go round because we basically created everything around. These rich motherfuckers ain't do no motherfucking work. They just push people around to make them do shit. So when you look at all that there is to be, is in you to know what the Creator is in you, being the love that you feel if you real, and you feel love unconditional that you can't control, but you know that you decided to love, not to hate.
Well, one, do you have firearms? And if you're watching this channel, you probably do. Are you going to go with them meekly, or are you going to open fire and empty the entire magazine? Reload if possible and keep emptying. Probably you're going to go with that because, hell, you don't have any option if you're about to be dragged off to a detention camp, right?
Right.
They might kill you there.
Yep.
It's defense of your own life and freedom. You have every right to it. Even biblically, man comes into your house, kill that man. So you've got that. These special operators, the Special Forces, Special Operations was created by John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, if you've listened to his speeches, knew something was up. He did talk about a grand conspiracy, and he did not say it was communism. He knew what was going on. John F. Kennedy created special forces, Navy SEALs, all these special operations units. So he also has a directive that goes from one team sergeant to the next to the next. Only the enlisted guys, not the officers. And that directive is simple. If the federal government goes rogue, every enlisted team sergeant, the man in charge, must have a plan. They must have a plan in place if the government goes rogue to deal with that situation. Special forces trains guerrillas and insurgents. And if they decide that the federal government's gone rogue, they're going to be all over this country training you and I how to fight back and restore our Constitution, I suppose, because obviously it's been gutted. So looking at that, it's like, well, the Army's probably not going to participate. Yeah, they got NORTHCOM ready. They got 20,000 soldiers, but if they bring NORTHCOM out, it's only 20,000 soldiers. Yeah, sure, they can go into one city and cause trouble, but the second a single camera captures a picture of them killing a citizen in total violation of posse comitatus, it is game on. And I honestly don't think federal government has any standing support really left. I honestly can see the whole country starting to just fracture under all the bullshit and the lies and the bad economy. You know, they're saying 8.6% unemployment now because they dumped a whole shitload of people off the unemployment rolls, not because they added any jobs. And they kind of did that right in our face. And, you know, Fast and Furious, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore that we deliberately sold firearms to Mexican drug cartels so that they could later use it as an agenda to take our weapon rights away to protect Mexico. And it's even coming to light that DEA is laundering drug money for the cartels. So for what, the third time in the last 30 years, the federal government's getting caught handling drug money? No big surprise. The thing is, it's coming as a surprise to a lot of people that this is how bad it really is. The whole thing's fracturing. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but I'll tell you right now, they can activate 600 FEMA camps. They can try to get the military ready, but they're losing. They are losing their support base based on their lies. And hey, congratulations, America. There hasn't been any ridiculous uprising. Occupy Wall Street has done a really good job of not losing their shit. The Tea Party did a good job. Everyone's been doing, you know, the Martin Luther King passive resistance. It seems to be working. And the federal government's scared. They're trying to turn Americans against Americans in order to protect themselves, I suppose, bring about this whole New World Order. But the whole thing seems to be falling apart at the seams.
Because
I'll tell you this, if anyone is ever going to round Americans up, lock them in detention centers, and start terminating them, the only, and I mean this, the only force in the world I see possible to come in here and do exactly that is the Chinese army. And that's it. That's the only organization I see in the entire world, but getting them here is going to be a bitch. I'm not worried about it, but I am telling you, it's been 3 years now. 3 years I've been awake, and I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. But to see it all falling apart at the seams right when they seem to be getting close to their end game, it's kind of nice. I don't think the U.S. federal government has even the resource or the capability or anything to implement any kind of total tyranny here. I think they've been trying hard. I think they're failing
if they live there
a lot.
And do it
I think
with
every
a flood,
day we step
like
forward now, their failures are getting bigger and more apparent to every human being that you wants to know.
Because they got people displaced.
So,
and when you got people displaced,
I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But, you know,
at
gold guns,
begging
getaway plans,
of what they need, and they're ready to beg and do anything.
I wouldn't be near any
what
big
they
cities
need. So they'll
at
take
all.
a ship
It's not the
in their
government I'm going to be
own
worried about. It's going to be
just to let them have somewhere to lay their
They're
head.
going to come out. They're going to come get what they think is theirs, or what they just decide is theirs. It's the only place I wouldn't want to be is near a big city full of gangsters. Wouldn't want to be there. I don't know what's going to come of all of this, but I can tell you right now that when I'm hearing legitimate stories about, you know, some of the most elite operators raising some very, very big and important questions about our own government and the validity of the information it's providing and what they're really doing, the federal government has a major problem when that starts to happen. So I don't know where this is all going to go. I really don't, but we will find out. But I'll make one little prediction. My thought, if you see U.S. Army NORTHCOM get marched out to start putting down the Occupy Wall Street protests, you know, when the federal government marched their army into Washington, D.C., it was legal because Washington, D.C. is a federal territory. When the Penn State shootings happened, it was Pennsylvania National Guard. It was legal. for them to open fire on the suits. It was not a good thing. What I'm saying is it wasn't in violation of posse comitatus. Neither one of them was. They were horrible things. But if they marched a federal army out, active duty soldiers, and you see them kill or seriously injure one protester, you're going to start to witness the shit hitting the fan and splaying the room. So I will go ahead and shut it up here. I'll talk with you guys later, and some of the link.
Got the dog. I feel exactly what you're saying. You're saying that your dog is like a dog.
Tsunami, the ocean's deadliest force. Giant waves with immense power. Massive, unstoppable, deadly.
A level of destruction that was, over hundreds of miles of the coastline.
We all travel the globe investigating some of the world's most devastating tsunamis. Each bigger than the last. Each packing more punch. Each taking us one step closer to a mega tsunami. A wave that will not just rewrite the record books, it will erase them.
We're doing this movie magic bullshit, man. Movie magic bullshit.
No coastline on the planet is truly safe from tsunamis. They're caused by massive displacements of water, triggered by the Earth's most powerful forces, earthquakes, landslides, and volcanic eruptions.
As long as we have earthquakes on Earth and landslides, the various phenomena that create tsunamis, we're going to have tsunami waves. It's just a matter of time when the next one strikes.
Tsunamis are dramatically different from the typical waves that constantly sweep across the planet. They can travel faster than 800 kilometers per hour. They can stretch for thousands of square kilometers across the ocean's surface.
It's a good 15, 20 feet tall. Easy.
They strike with huge mass and terrifying velocity. The most common method of gauging their height is run-up, the wave's highest point of impact on land. Each tsunami profiled here has a higher run-up than the last. Over 100 major tsunamis have struck in the past 100 years, killing hundreds of thousands and destroying billions of dollars of property. But they are not the biggest tsunamis to strike the planet. Scientists have found startling evidence that even larger waves have occurred in the past. Mega tsunamis.
Shut the fuck up.
These things have been described.
Shut the fuck up, you lying bitch. Shut the fuck up, you lying bastard.
Believe that a mega
Because how could you show how a mega tsunami didn't hit some fucking well? How? How can you prove that shit? You lying bastard.
Destructive tsunamis the past 60 years. Each has its own character, each has its own story, each brings us closer to a mega disaster.
Or they getting their population control down, pack people, creating up more. This is fucked up.
Hawaii is a tropical paradise.
But we loving people, we can change this shit. All we gotta do is just put our vibrations together and this shit. Because as long as y'all constantly believe in this guy, then you get this shit.
The Hawaiian Islands,
We gonna get
seeing
fucked
as they
in
do in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, are affected by tsunamis from all regions of the Pacific.
4 of us can do it. We can make some money over this shit. Everybody get a chance to win. At the end, it is what it is. The best team gonna win it all. But to win all in a row don't make no motherfucking sense. You ain't get that much money for both of us. At the end of the game, everybody gonna be happy because they made some money.
And from all directions.
Destructive tsunami struck here in 1837, 1868, 1877, 1923, 1946.
How you know? How you know? How you know? How you know? How you know?
This makes it the unofficial tsunami capital of the Pacific.
If you ain't got no Hawaiian,
12 years ago,
if you ain't got no Hawaiian on here, if you ain't got no Hawaiian on here telling you that that's what happened in that motherfucking year, I don't believe nothing none of y'all motherfuckers say any fucking way. All I can say is I got faith in what's in your heart. I don't have faith in you telling the truth at all. I don't have faith in believing in what you're saying at all. But I have faith in what's in your heart. Period. And my faith is that you will find out that your heart is the only the only part in you that's smart because it pumps the blood throughout the body. It don't suck it. And if you take the time to filter out all the things that's divine that goes through your mind, body, and soul, once you take the time out to know by filtering the shit that goes through your heart before you go, shit, you'll realize you can find out what the truth is within you. But we live in some bullshit, people. There's some bullshit, rich sons of bitches that's playing us all
2:28
for
a.m.
fucking
April
fools.
1st, 1946. A magnitude 8.1 earthquake rips through the Aleutian Islands off the coast of Alaska. A huge stretch of the ocean floor is uplifted, displacing the entire column of water above it.
See, all y'all gonna do is make people quit,
A
and then you ain't gonna get
massive
shit.
energy propels a
This
wall of
fucking
water,
stupid
the
shit
tsunami,
that y'all
towards
kids do.
Hawaii at nearly
Because all y'all
500
kids that's on
kilometers
this
per
game,
hour.
I'm just gonna let you know, if your mom or your dad is together and they gave you this game, they don't give a fuck about you. Because your little mind is too fucking impressionable to be on this stupid ass game, learning the bullshit that it's teaching you.
3,800 kilometers away in the small
We can
seaside
leave like
towns
that.
of Laupahoe,
I don't need none of y'all
children
sorry son
and
of a bitch on this
teachers
side
gather to
anyway.
prepare for the day's classes.
We can handle this.
Marcy McShane is one of the teachers.
We were in our cottages, and the Aki owners who lived in that house that's no longer there knocked on our door and said, "Come see the tidal wave."
At first glance, it's deceptively innocent.
We looked over,
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about.
ocean sucked out, and then it came in a little bit more, like emptying a bathtub and sucked out again. We said, "This is a tidal wave." I don't think much of that.
What Marcy doesn't know is that tsunamis are not single waves. They move forward in what's known as a tsunami train, a group of waves of many different sizes. First waves are seldom the largest, so what appears to be insignificant is actually the precursor to something much, much bigger.
And then it did it again. And this time, it went in further and sucked out more. And we thought, a twin tidal wave. How interesting and odd.
As the water recedes, an extraordinary 152 meters, Marsu and her roommates pose for a photograph. Marsu stands captivated while the third wave approaches.
Famous last words, I said, "I hope this will be a big one." It kept coming. And that was the first time we ever thought to be afraid.
As the tsunami approaches shore, it behaves like a giant train wreck. The front of the wave slows while the back continues to push. The wave's energy is compressed, forcing it to stand and lift out of the sea.
It's got bigger, and so we dropped the camera, ran inside. I can remember the water just crashed in the windows. The roof fell down.
Oh, you going to the ground, buddy.
The wave tosses Marsu
Going to the ground, buddy.
at first in towards the school, but then suddenly
Time this just right.
And I knew I was going to die.
Marsu spends the next 9 hours clinging to debris before finally being rescued. She is the only lucky one. All of her roommates perish. At the school, 16 children and 5 teachers are lost. But the tsunami is not finished with Hawaii. 37 kilometers south of Laupahoehoe, the sleepy trading town of Hilo Bay is also caught unawares. Here, the tsunami destroys nearly 500 homes and businesses, kills 96 and injures hundreds.
Descriptions of the 1946 tsunami were that it came across the breakwater with the greatest of ease, just overcame it,
and then washed across town. Other people describe seeing boulders blasted out as the water surged across.
Walter Dudley is an oceanographer from the University of Hawaii in Hilo Bay. For more than 20 years, he studied tsunamis. One of his most significant findings is that their destructive power is caused not just by the wave itself, but also by what's underneath them.
Well, one of the things that makes them such an interesting phenomenon to study is that they are all different. And as they travel across the oceans, they're affected by the ocean floor along their tracks. So the waves are constantly being bent or refracted. And then as they come ashore, they are further altered.
No two pieces of coastline are the same. Each has its own unique undersea topography that affects the waves differently. In Hilo, it is the natural rounded shape of the bay.
You can think of the bathtub, and the children in the bathtub, they can slap the water back and forth. They quickly find out that there's a speed at which the water will really move.
The first two waves to hit the bathtub-shaped Hilo Bay caused the water to slosh back and forth. When a third wave arrived, it combined with the sloshing water to produce a larger and more destructive wave.
Pretty much right
drive the plane.
Ocean side of town, the main parts of downtown, picked up the railway, they twisted the railway rails into pretzels.
The third wave reached a run-up height of 9 meters. It destroyed most of the foreshore of Hilo Bay. But less than 15 years after the 46 disaster, Hawaii would again be hit by a deadly tsunami. A wave bigger than the last that would defy logic and bring Hilo to its knees once more. On May 22, 1960, the largest earthquake in recorded history ruptures the Earth's crust off the coast of Chile. 1,000 kilometers of the ocean floor is violently thrust up 20 meters, storming a monster tsunami. It's so huge and powerful that it crosses the entire Pacific Ocean, slamming into Hawaii on the way. This time, technology installed since the 1946 quake warns residents of Hilo Bay 5 hours in advance. But the warning falls on deaf ears.
For the preceding 12 years, about 3 out of 4 alarms have turned out to be small tsunamis. So instead of inspiring fear, let's get away from this potential disaster, I think it inspired curiosity. Because it is a fascinating phenomenon. Let's go down and watch.
Although the civil defense were saying people evacuate, there were a lot of us, me included, that out of curiosity went down to look, to see what was going to happen.
Local real estate agent Al Inouye and many others assumed that because this wave is coming from the southeast and Hilo faces the north, the bay will be spared. They are wrong. Just after midnight, the first wave strikes.
You could hear people yelling and screaming behind me that were being caught in the wave. That was an experience because, and it still stays in my mind. I was screaming and yelling, and I couldn't do anything about it. It sounded like several trains, rushing down a track. I mean, it was really a roar, and you can hear the crashing of houses against each other. It's hard to describe. It was just a sound that you don't want to hear it. I mean, it was horrible.
Dawn breaks on a nightmare. 61 people are dead and more than 700 buildings destroyed or severely damaged. The 1960 tsunami took locals and experts by surprise. After thorough study, scientists discovered a remarkable aspect of the tsunami. As the wave reached the shallow water off the southeast coast of the island, the middle of the wave slowed, while the outside of the wave kept moving, causing the wave to wrap around the island. Then, just as in 1946, the natural shape of the bay added to the tsunami's destructive power. This time, the largest wave had a run-up height of 10.5 meters, 1.5 meters higher than in 1946. But Hawaii wasn't the only location struck by the monster tsunami. It roared thousands of kilometers across the Pacific, striking virtually every coast, including Japan, where 122 people died.
Tsunamis have an incredible amount of energy, and as they travel across the ocean, they use up very, very little of that. It's when they come ashore that all that energy is unleashed.
The 1946 and 1960 tsunamis gave scientists new insights into the complex behavior and ocean-crossing power of these giant waves. But when a local tsunami hits Japan, it strikes with larger and more powerful waves than the 46 and 60 Hawaiian tsunamis combined. And there's no time to evacuate.
76. Stay there, 76. We're gonna let you win the whole thing. You just hang in there. We ain't gonna win all of them. Ain't you by yourself?
The 1946 and 1960 Hawaiian tsunamis had run-up heights of 9 and 10.5 meters. Shaped and intensified by the ocean floor and coastline, they smashed the island communities with unexpected force. But there's another tsunami hotspot where a larger and more deadly wave struck without warning. Second only to Hawaii, Japan is the most tsunami-prone location in the Pacific. The Japanese have been hit so many times by these giant waves that they created the word tsunami, meaning harbor wave, to describe these terrifying events. These waves can come from as far away as Chile or as close as 80 kilometers offshore. The locally generated tsunamis pose the greatest danger. They strike within minutes of being formed and with awesome power. 10:17 p.m., July 12, 1993. A magnitude 7.8 earthquake rips the ocean floor of the coast of Hokkaido. The epicenter is only 80 kilometers from the tiny island of Okushiri and generates one of the biggest and most destructive tsunamis Japan has ever experienced. Fisherman Jiro Adachi from the village of Aonai knows about tsunamis. He survived one 10 years earlier that also hit Okushiri. When Jiro feels the earthquake, he knows a tsunami is probable. He quickly evacuates his wife and children from their seaside home, sending them to higher ground in the car while he shuts off the gas. He moves swiftly, but not swiftly enough. Just 4 minutes after the quake, the first wave hits him with overwhelming force as it surges to an incredible 15 meters.
It started to pull me back into the sea. I held on to something and thought that I must run to the mountain.
Somehow, Jiro manages to find firm ground. He flees to the safety of a nearby hill. In a few terrifying minutes, the tsunami destroys 80 houses and fishing shacks. But the danger is not over. Out of the darkness, a second wave strikes. Homes, boats, cars and trucks, spared by the first wave, are smashed to pieces. Fires erupt as gas pipes burst. Aonai is under siege. Jiro and other survivors rush to the waterfront to help the injured.
People shouted for help. They were calling, "Help me, help me." I heard a lot of voices, women's voices and children's voices.
Suddenly, amidst the cries for help, Jiro hears something that chills his heart.
Suddenly I heard a familiar voice between wave breaks, so I shouted, "Achan, is that you, Achan?" And then I heard, "Daddy." I heard that from the darkness.
His young daughter is somewhere in the raging sea. As Jiro's family fled, the tsunami's first wave rolled their car and hurled them into the ocean.
Alright. I would see them out this fucking
Jiro
big.
dives into the turbulent waters.
For a selfish person. Feel like they gotta show people the accomplishments.
Sometimes I was swimming but I couldn't move forward at all. And other times I'd suddenly be pulled backwards by the sea.
Miraculously, father and daughter make it to shore. 7 hours later, the Coast Guard finds Jiro's wife and son kilometers out to sea, clinging to debris. As dawn breaks, the tsunami's power becomes horrifically clear. Large parts of Aonai are completely flattened. Fires continue to rage, and most of the fishing fleet is lost. Across the island, 437 houses are destroyed and more than 800 severely damaged. 198 people are dead. The aftermath of the disaster confronts scientists with an intriguing mystery. The two waves that hit Aonai came from completely different directions.
The first wave of the tsunami came from the west area where the seismic center was, and it attacked only the low part in the south area of Aonai.
But the second wave came from the east, away from the tsunami's source.
The second wave came in just 10 minutes after the first, and it attacked all of this area of Aonai.
The first wave that hit the west coast of Okushiri came directly from the source. But then, just like in Hawaii, the tsunami wrapped around the island, creating a second wave that struck Aonai from the opposite direction. But the wraparound effect does not explain why the tsunami hit Okushiri with such brutal force. The reason is the extreme proximity of the event which created the tsunami. After a tsunami is generated, it radiates up, not like ripples on a pond. As the ripples expand wider and wider, the energy spreads out over a larger area. The closer the source of the tsunami is to the impact zone, the more concentrated the energy.
I can see him doing it.
Okushiri was only 80 kilometers from the source, so it received the full brunt of the tsunami. Just north of Aonai, the waves reached a staggering 31 meters. Today, the legacy of the 1993 tsunami is set in concrete. Huge walls up to 11 meters high and extending 14 kilometers along the coast stand guard against the sea. Powerful steel gates protect river mouths, and the harbor is bolstered by concrete blocks to reduce wave impact. These ramparts against the waves are stronger than normal sea walls for good reason. The forces they must withstand are utterly different. Normal waves form through the transfer of energy from the wind to the ocean surface. Tsunamis are generated by phenomenal transfers of energy. Even the largest wind waves have a maximum wavelength from crest to crest of a few hundred meters. Tsunamis can have wavelengths of hundreds of kilometers. When they hit, they keep coming and coming. In a unique experiment, scientists in Japan are measuring the impact of those forces. At this lab in Kanagawa, engineers are using the largest man-made tsunami in the world to help design stronger coastal structures. This machine can generate waves more than 3 meters high, propelling 300 cubic meters of water down a 180-meter long chute.
The best thing is to know the characteristics of the power of tsunami in each situation and build buildings according to those characteristics.
Taro Arikawa leads a team that measures the power of tsunamis under controlled conditions. This tsunami is only 2/3 of a meter high, but it strikes with 1 ton per square meter of power. To demonstrate what that kind of power can do, Arikawa puts himself in the wave's line of fire. Without the rope and harness, he'd be swept away by this miniature tsunami. Bigger tsunamis are even more powerful. This 2.4 meter wave hits with a force of 10 tons per square meter. Even after the initial impact, it continues to surge forward with a sustained pressure of 4 tons per square meter. The tsunami in Okushiri was much higher and hundreds of times more powerful. Scientists here believe their studies will translate into stronger and better engineered structures, capable of withstanding tsunami strikes.
Once we can reduce the power, the reduced destructive power of tsunami coming ashore would not cause as much damage.
The Okushiri event shows how destructive a local tsunami can be. It strikes with undiluted power and too quickly to respond. But that disaster was eclipsed by a far bigger and more deadly tsunami. A wave generated by an earthquake so powerful it moved the entire planet. A wave that takes us one step closer to a mega disaster. The tsunami that hit Okushiri, Japan, came from just 80 kilometers away and reached a run-up height of 31 meters. It killed 198 people and destroyed most of the fishing village of Aonai. But it pales in comparison to the deadliest tsunami of modern times. 7:58 a.m., December 26, 2004. Deep in the ocean off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia, 1,200 kilometers of the Earth's crust ruptures in the second largest earthquake ever recorded. The 9.3 quake shatters buildings and destroys lives. But it is just a forerunner of an even more horrific disaster. An epic tsunami spreads across the entire Indian Ocean, striking 12 countries. As with Okushiri, Japan, the local effects are the most immediate and the most devastating. 16 minutes after the quake and 250 kilometers from its epicenter, northern Sumatra is struck by 35-meter-high waves. The capital city of Banda Aceh is decimated. More than 160,000 people are killed. Coastal engineer Jose Borrero arrived in Banda Aceh 4 days behind the tsunami.
I've seen hurricane damage, and I've seen some flood damage before, and I've seen a lot of tsunamis after effects before also. But this definitely was the worst. What was amazing about it was the scale.
70% of all buildings in Banda Aceh are flattened. More than 70 kilometers of coastline show evidence of wave heights above 30 meters.
Yeah, they're doing it.
It was a level of destruction that was overlooked.
Presenting just for men, Autosave. It's time travel in color. It gives you back your natural hair color before you make gray. No mix, no miss. Fill in and your natural hair color is back. Lift off. Just for men, Autosave.
History Center, and today we're going to be discussing something big that's about to happen. And it looks like it is happening quicker than we think. Now, no matter if the delusion about the Revelation 12 sign or when something about to happen, September 23rd, 2015, 16, and now September 23rd, 2017. Okay, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a golden cloak with the sun and the moon under its feet. At the top of heaven, a cloud was achieving no
Same people wrote that shit is the same people doing this shit. Stupid.
and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 20 horns, and 7 crowns. For instance, this passage has stumped a lot of scholars and researchers for a long time. No one knows something weird. On September 23rd, 2015, they were saying that the stars were bouncing. You know, the star were bouncing. And this is the same star that came when Jesus was born. This is the same star.
Shut up, boy. Shut up, boy. You going by the shit that you was taught as a fucking kid. You talk about shit that you was taught as a kid. Jesus ain't never walked on no planet. Jesus was never born, partner. That was a story. A story. And you laying up there putting this shit out here talking about the Truth fucking channel. I'm sorry to tell you that your truth is bullshit. Because I can put holes all through that shit. I'm trying to tell you, man, no. I know that that's all bullshit. Let's see some more about this storm. What's the side of that here?
Crazy. Roma, Oklahoma. That's insane. I've never seen anything like that. Baseball size hail. He's bouncing 15, 20 years when they hit that. Your car's bigger than me. I know. Oh. That could be. Oh my God. Yeah, it sounds like three years with all the roof. We just get through with the transformer that we completely,
This shit is amazing. If you don't know if it's Mother Nature or man with this bullshit. That's unbelievable.
Can I stop now? Can I stop now? Jeez.
Cloud. I mean, y'all see how that shit look, that shit hard. This good shit, this thing is a weapon. This thing is a weapon, brother.
Political and religious grounds, to wartime frenzies and fears of future terrorist attack.
The unwanted casualties of war. The relocation centers are supervised by the War Relocation Authority, which assumes responsibility for the people after they have been evacuated and cared for temporarily by the Army. The relocation centers, housing from 7,000 to 18,000 people. The entire community bounded by a wire fence and guarded by military police, symbols of the military nature of the evacuation. Each family, upon arrival at a relocation center, was assigned to a single-room compartment, about 20 by 25 feet. Barren, unattractive. A stove, a light bulb, pots, mattresses, and blankets. Those were the things provided by the government.
In 1942, the United States government forcibly relocated over 112,000 Japanese nationals and Japanese Americans to remote housing facilities called war relocation camps for the purpose of detainment, re-education, and forced labor. Of those interned, 62% were United States citizens. President Franklin Roosevelt authorized the internment with Executive Order 9066, allowing military commanders to designate military areas as exclusion zones. This power was then used to declare the entire Pacific coast as an exclusion zone, forbidding people of Japanese descent to live within these areas, unless, of course, they were held in war relocation camps. In 1944, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of these exclusion zones, and in 1945, after 2.5 long years of imprisonment, the interns were finally released. The United States government issued no formal apologies, but did present each former inmate with exactly $25 in cash and a train ticket home, if they were lucky enough to still have one.
Wow.
43 years later, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan would sign a bill that formally apologized for the internment of Japanese Americans on behalf of the United States government, and finally granted reparations to survivors.
Wow.
The language of the bill stated that government actions of the 1940s internments were based upon 3 criteria: racial prejudice, wartime hysteria, and a failure of political leadership.
So what is most important in this bill has less to do with property than with honor. For here we admit a wrong. Here we reaffirm our commitment as a nation to equal justice under the law.
In 2001, following the attacks of September the 11th, our government again went into open roundup mode, detaining and imprisoning thousands of United States citizens, again seemingly based upon the same 3 criteria used to intern Japanese Americans: race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership.
Yep.
Let there be no argument. The United States government has put its own citizens in detention centers. The justifications for doing so range from personal prejudices based upon political and religious grounds to wartime frenzies and fears of future terrorist attacks. In a time of great crisis, the impossible becomes possible.
And they did all that shit they fucking self.
That internment camps are being built in the United States today.
Yep.
Is it possible that history will repeat itself?
Yep. Yep. What goes around comes around. If you don't put your fucking foot down and get rid of the fucking snakes.
And it's stunning, particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment.
Well, we used internment camps here in the United States during World War II, and we interned Japanese Americans, or Americans, I should say, to be more correct, Americans of Japanese descent. And these people were cordoned off for the duration of the war. Background checks could have been done. They could have been released or cleared out of these facilities. But it was thought best, because there was so much animosity toward the Japanese for the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Oh, when we did that shit, they ain't attacked Pearl Harbor. We set it up for them to live there and look like they attacked Pearl Harbor, because we could have wiped their heads off when they did that shit. But it is what it is. It was our government planting and plotting.
On April 1st, 1979, by Presidential Executive Order 12127, the Federal Emergency Management Agency was created for the purpose of coordinating the response to disasters that have occurred in the United States and that overwhelm the resources of local and state authorities. Upon its creation, FEMA absorbed the Federal Insurance Administration, the National Fire Prevention and Control Administration, the National Weather Service Community Preparedness Program, as well as several other federal-level preparedness programs. FEMA was also given the responsibility for overseeing the United States Civil Defense, a function which had previously been performed by the DoD's Defense Civil Preparedness Agency. In 2003, FEMA became part of the Department of Homeland Security's Emergency Preparedness and Response Directorate. FEMA follows three simple directives. 1. National emergency recovery. 2. Continuity of government. And 3. Combating perceived threats to the existing social and political order. FEMA's implicit objective to provide aid to victims of disasters changed under the leadership of President George W. Bush.
After he blew up September 11th.
Prior to the Bush administration, FEMA's reaction time for responding to and the handling of national emergencies was beginning to improve. But in 2003, President Bush would shift the focus of responding to emergencies in America by placing FEMA under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security.
That's how we got fucked up.
Whose stated objective was and still is to protect our nation from dangerous people.
Like itself.
Did the Bush administration's war on terror mentality take priority over the government's emergency response to provide aid to victims during a national disaster?
We're fighting evil.
And I remember my first words to him were, Mr. President, my estimate is that 90% of the population of New Orleans has now been displaced. 90%? Yes, sir, I believe it is that bad. That's how bad it is. I really thought that would get just the whole mechanism of the federal government to come charging in, is once again this mentality that it's a natural disaster.
Yep.
It's a hurricane. It's not Al-Qaeda.
The most important job of government
is to protect the homeland.
In the midst of a searing heat wave, Jefferson County residents lined up in their cars for food and water, wondering what took so long.
Slow. Everything is slow.
The man who runs the county, Judge Carl Griffith, agrees, and in a meeting with President Bush this morning said FEMA's delivery of relief supplies was unacceptably slow.
To save American lives, we must be able to act fast.
A real distrust of the federal government, especially with the levee system, because now the Army Corps has pushed that date back now to 2011. It was supposed to be up by 2010.
As requests for emergency assistance poured in after Hurricane Katrina, one applicant listed this as his address, the Greenwood Cemetery in New Orleans. FEMA promptly issued a check for $2,358 for rental assistance. That's just one of thousands of examples of alleged fraud and abuse described in a new report by the investigative arm of Congress. Cost to taxpayers about $1 billion.
The examples are so egregious that what they tell us is that FEMA didn't perform even basic checks to safeguard taxpayers' money.
Well, today the outrage spread to Congress, where House members accuse FEMA of a cover-up. 2 years after Katrina, 76,000 FEMA trailers are still being used to house families who lost their homes. Many of the trailers have high levels of formaldehyde, which can result in dangerous respiratory problems.
3 of my children began having severe nosebleeds several times a week.
It got so bad that this past Tuesday I actually had to go to the emergency room.
Several deaths may well be linked to toxic levels of formaldehyde gas.
It is a sick organization, and it has totally lost the confidence of the people of America.
Overnight, FEMA decided to stop issuing debit cards at Houston shelters, but almost no one there hoping for a card had any idea.
Pile everybody up in a van and come up there, and we can't even get what they said we was going to get.
Even Houston's relief coordinators told FEMA a heads up would have been helpful.
We just would make sure everyone understood that every time they change their mind in Washington, D.C., it affects people here that are trying to deal with tens of thousands of people.
We're talking about damage from Hurricane Rita last year, 2 devastated schools and kids and parents waiting for help. A few months ago, the folks at FEMA told the schools, one in Iberia Parish and one in Vermilion Parish in Louisiana, that they would get millions to relocate to higher ground. FEMA even helped them draw up the plan. And then FEMA took it back.
Endless delays, he says, caused by FEMA, which just last week delayed money for rebuilding yet again.
There.
More worried about their own positions in FEMA, their own salaries than the recovery process down here.
There is a new hitch to report about those infamous FEMA trailers. After spending nearly $3 billion taxpayer dollars to buy them, it turns out many went unused, and now FEMA is unloading them at bargain basement prices while other people need them.
After a lengthy investigation, the congressional architects of the Department of Homeland Security concluded today that FEMA, the agency that is supposed to respond to hurricanes and national disasters, should be taken out of the mammoth Homeland Security bureaucracy, disbanded and put back together in a better way, and placed under direct control of the president during emergencies.
A Senate report on the government's response to Hurricane Katrina says FEMA is so far beyond repair that the agency should be scrapped.
It said that agency failed in its view to anticipate and then respond to Katrina.
FEMA is discredited, demoralized, and dysfunctional.
And it's still fucking in existence. That's bullshit.
Demoralized, and dysfunctional.
And it's still in existence.
In the mid-1970s, the discredited federal government was more scared of the public than ever, coming off the years of Richard Nixon. And so 2 Cold Warriors inside the White House of Gerald Ford begin to bring back some of the Cold War ideas of an executive takeover of the United States through a emergency federal agency. And those individuals were Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. And so really what we see being set up by Jimmy Carter in 1979 is just a continuation of federal policy to expand a federal takeover plan for continuity of government. And so that's what the Federal Emergency Management Agency was really set up for.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster, Mr. Chairman?
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
One of the programs that got exposed during Iran-Contra was Rex 84. Congressman Jack Brooks, in those hearings, brought up the fact that in reality, FEMA was a cover for a huge continuity of government program in case the American people ever rebelled. And that was the architecture, the blueprint for the illegitimate shadow government to fully take over the functions of the entire federal government, suspend the Constitution, suspend the Bill of Rights, and arrest whoever they wanted to. And FEMA was going to control the camps that the people were going to be put into. And FEMA would be the main governmental institution with different directors over every agency. And now when you watch FEMA on television, it's always a colonel or a general or an admiral in uniform who's over the different departments.
The martial law portions of Rex 84 were outlined in a 1982 memo written by FEMA Deputy John Brinkerhoff. Martial law was to be declared in the event of a national crisis, yet the plan did not define the term national crisis. The plan allowed FEMA to take control of both federal and state governments, appointing military commanders to replace duly elected officials. The plan also called for the rounding up of at least 21 million American Negroes for delivery to numerous military bases converted into prison centers, also known as FEMA relocation camps. Why? Because at that time, African Americans were classified as one of the largest threats to the continuity of the federal government. Who does the federal government consider the biggest threat these days?
The people. The people.
The convergence of globalization and technology has created a new brand of terrorism. There were persons who, for whatever reason, came to view their home country as the enemy.
The kind of right-wing, religious-based domestic terrorism.
Disturbing news tonight about homegrown terror.
Part of this is big change in the White House, a new cultural experience, and some of the crazies are coming out of the closet.
Right now, it looks like there is no connection between the men arrested and any known terrorist cell. Homegrown. Homegrown, I should say.
Folks, we've got a very serious situation here. I'm holding what is called the right-wing extremism, current economic and political climate, fueling resurgence and radicalization and recruitment. And in it, we talk about the fact that they define pro-lifers as domestic terrorists. They put this in a Department of Homeland Security document, this official assessment, now saying pro-lifers, people that believe in end-time prophecies, people that are opposed to the administration's position on immigration, those of us that are standing up for the sanctity of life and for the sanctity of marriage, all of those are now potential, and this is what they're saying, domestic terrorists.
It's a terrorist next door that could be our bigger threat.
Man, our fucking government is a fucking terrorist. Our fucking police is the fucking terrorists. The fucking judges, these motherfucking prosecutors are the fucking terrorists. But y'all terrorists don't realize that after y'all get finished terrorizing, it's y'all turn, because the circle of life goes around. And your turn comes around and your shit gonna be worse than the shit that you put down. You're gonna actually really not be able to deal with it. You're gonna commit suicide.
A lot of people to keep track of. They're adding new people all the time.
time. It's a secret list that you don't know really quite how one gets on, and you don't know how you get off.
They're coming out and profiling huge groups of people. You know, if you voted for a certain political candidate, you should be considered a potential threat. And you couple that with things like the Patriot Act, where if you are a threat in their eyes, you can be held without access to judge, jury, and
boy, that's fucking straight up slavery. That's straight up fucking slavery. Fuck y'all government bullshit. Especially when you look at y'all got us where you can smoke fucking cigarettes, but you'll go to jail for fucking marijuana, and marijuana ain't never killed no fucking body. And on the back of the motherfucking cigarette pack it says secondhand smoke will and do fucking kill. How fucking stupid can we be as the motherfucking sheeple, people? Fuck.
States that in the event of catastrophic emergency, a cooperative effort among the executive, legislative, and judicial branches of the federal government, coordinated by the president, will replace normal governmental procedure.
Most Americans would agree that it would be prudent to have a plan to provide for the continuity of government. They have such a plan. They introduced a little sketchy public version that's clearly inadequate and doesn't really tell us what they have in mind. But they said, don't worry, there's a detailed classified version.
A classified version.
Denied the entire Homeland Security Committee of the United States House of Representatives access to their so-called detailed plan to provide for continuity of government. They say, trust us. Trust us?
Fuck you.
George W.
Trust
Bush,
that.
Barack H. Obama, the corruption, the tyranny just expands like PDD 51, where the president says, Congress, you have no authority over any way the government runs ever again.
Wow.
During an emergency. The presidency runs everything. You are literally titular. You are a figurehead. You are ceremonial. And congressmen, then on the Homeland Security Committee, this high-level clearance of the president said, we want to see the entire PDD 51. And the White House says, no, you don't get to see it because PDD 51 removes you from that process. This is high treason against the people.
Yep.
It is high treason to have the executive telling the Congress, you can't see Presidential Decision Directive 51. You can't see its accompanying executive order. You don't have any authority over anything anymore.
Fuck that, you bitches.
Dysfunctional. This is high treason against the people.
Well, the people ain't nothing but sheep, but they ain't gonna stand up. They're too afraid to die and lose their fucking places.
The FBI's counterintelligence.
But when you're in the motherfucking concentration camp, you don't have no motherfucking places. You ain't die.
Programs conducted by the United States government and aimed squarely at investigating and disrupting dissident political organizations within the United States. According to a Senate Select Committee study chaired by Senator Frank Church, and including such members as Phil Hart, Walter Mondale, and Barry Goldwater, the FBI's motivation for conducting these programs was protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order. Targets included the Black Panther Party, the Ku Klux Klan, communist and socialist organizations, as well as non-violent civil rights organizations, anti-war groups, and a broad range of organizations lumped together under the title New Left, which included groups labeled for intensified attention, such as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and Congress of Racial Equality. Over the course of 4 presidential administrations, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover ordered FBI agents to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of these movements and their leaders. Speakers, teachers, and writers, even individual student demonstrators with no group affiliation, were all fair game. Individual case studies revealed that the FBI was successful in preventing the distribution of books, newspapers, and periodicals. They prevented groups from forming and disrupted peaceful demonstrations and large anti-war marches. as well as denied groups and organizations facilities to hold meetings and conferences. According to attorney Brian Glick in his book War at Home, the FBI used 4 main methods for their counterintelligence program. Number 1, infiltration, getting agents on the inside in order to undermine trust and scare off potential supporters. Number 2, psychological warfare, planting false media stories, forging correspondence, making anonymous phone calls, spreading misinformation about meetings and events, setting up pseudo-movement groups run by government agents, and manipulating and threatening parents, employers, landlords, school officials, and others to cause trouble for activists. Number 3, harassment through the legal system. The FBI and police abuse the legal system to harass dissidents and make them appear to be criminals. Officers of the law gave perjured testimony and presented fabricated evidence
Liars,
as a pretext for false arrests and wrongful imprisonment. They also discriminatorily enforce tax laws and other government regulations. Number 4, extra-legal force and violence. The FBI and police threatened, instigated, and themselves conducted break-ins, vandalism, assaults, and beatings, all in the name of maintaining the existing social and political order.
Increased security for 4 New Jersey Supreme Court justices after their home addresses were revealed in a webcast by a self-proclaimed white supremacist.
Welcome to the Hal Turner Show.
Doesn't a noose symbolize hate, bigotry, division?
Justice.
Who are you? Where you calling from?
Hola, this is Pedro.
Spick,
from San Diego.
don't call my radio show anymore, you filthy spick animal.
People were being profiled and stopped if they had certain kind of bumper stickers on their car, like a Ron Paul bumper sticker or a Chuck Baldwin supporter. And as you read the Make report, bits and pieces of that were lifted right out of the Project Megiddo report back in 1999 by the FBI, describing what terrorists were, how law enforcement could identify potential terrorists. And I can remember back in the 90s, the FBI was doing an education program with local law enforcement, and what they had was a trifold pamphlet. Again, this was not meant for public consumption, only to be passed around amongst the rank and file in the police. It ran through the list of what a potential terrorist might be or what they might prescribe to. And the list is kind of interesting. If you were a supporter of the Constitution, if you're an ardent supporter of the Second Amendment, or even if you were a person of deep religious conviction, you might be a member of a certain cult. And going back to Project Megiddo, it's all basically the same thing. That if you have any strong beliefs in anything, that you could be a possible threat. You could be a terrorist threat against government structure.
In Missouri, a new document meant to help Missouri law enforcement agencies identify militia members or domestic terrorists has drawn criticism. The February 20 report called the Modern Militia Movement mentions such red flags as political bumper stickers for third-party candidates, such as Ron Paul, who ran for president, talk of conspiracy theories such as the plan for a superhighway linking Canada to Mexico, and possession of subversive literature. So the state police in Missouri have been told that if you see a car with a bumper sticker that opposes the so-called creation of North American Union, the silver superhighway, that you are probably following a militiaman, that you are following an anti-government radical. If you see a car with a bumper sticker that says Ron Paul for president, you might be dealing with a violent radical. Exercise extreme caution.
We do know that 28% of their funding comes from the Department of Homeland Security. This is not the first time that a report has been issued to Missouri law enforcement and surrounding fusion centers in other states by the MIAC Center. This right here is a stack of every single one of the MIAC reports that has been drafted. MIAC Alert, Constitution Rangers, June 7th, 2007. You've got the Black Separatism Bulletin, November 4th, 2008, American Radical Islam Converts. Here's the MIAC Strategic Report, dated 11/28/2008, on the anarchist movement. You've got it on the Modern Committees of Safety, Voice of the People, or Militias in Disguise. That's January 9, 2009, which came out right before the infamous MIAC Strategic Report on the Modern Militia Movement. So they've been producing these documents for quite some time. If the people profiled in this document could be considered a potential threat to law enforcement, that means they could be considered a potential domestic terrorist. And if you have the word terrorist attached to your name, whether it is domestic or foreign, the Patriot Act still applies to you, whether you're an American citizen or not.
I remind you that before the Nazis began to persecute and incarcerate and kill and so forth the Jewish people in Germany, the first thing they did was label them as extremists and fanatics and all these kind of things and get the people conditioned against them. And then with the approbation of the general populace, they were able to unleash the fury of the state against them and the all fortunate that happened as a result of that.
Is that the base of a terrorist that they had to know where their gas came from?
Again, it's turning more into fascism.
It's one thing for them to make sure you don't have a gun or a bomb in your pocket. It's another thing for them to not like a book.
This shows you the danger of profiling. Maybe he was profiled because he had a Ron Paul bumper sticker.
An anti-tax demonstration is scheduled for downtown's Keener Plaza April 15th. The charges are flying that one of the organizing groups is an extremist anti-government group.
The Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League have their own opinions about the Constitution Party.
I think we'd consider it a fringe right-wing political party that we consider to have extremist roots. When we talk about the New World Order,
It's you a fucking extremist group. Fucking United States of America's motherfucking corporation is an extremist group.
language that comes out of them is white supremacy.
The elites have said that they want to have a final revolution, that they know the public's going to revolt against them. So that's why they've scientifically set up the surveillance grid, the cashless society. This whole continuity of government system is designed to suppress and control the people of America. Northcom, the Pentagon, the military are all announcing their number one job now is fighting the American people. They're saying the number one terror threat is veterans and gun owners and conservatives and libertarians and Ron Paul supporters. And I've been sent secret Army documents. We call the phone numbers and they're accurate and real, where I'm being watched in the Fed protest, where we peacefully go out and demonstrate. And now even the ACLU has written letters saying, why is the Pentagon watching U.S. citizens? Why are you listing any protest as an act of terrorism? The real terrorists are the people that have hijacked our nation that would dare say the First Amendment is terrorism.
Two new reports out document an alarming rise in the number of hate groups in the United States. The Southern Poverty Law Center's intelligence report found 926 active hate groups in the country. That's up more than 50% from just 2000. Morris Dees is the founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He joins us from Montgomery, Alabama. Good morning, sir. Your report dovetails with a brand new report from the Department of Homeland Security claiming basically the same thing. And they say part of it is because of the election of President Obama. Other part of the responsibility goes to the deteriorating economy.
Political climate, the election of Obama, the immigration issues that have faced the United States over the last 5 to 10 years, and now especially the economy, is almost causing a resurgence of what we saw in the days of Timothy McVeigh. Almost a militia movement that's being reborn in the United States.
Homeland Security says people who oppose abortion or worry about the threat of illegal aliens could pose a radical threat to America.
It warns about groups and individuals dedicated to single issues like abortion, immigration, and gun rights, and even raises a red flag about veterans returning home from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan.
This report seems to lump in ordinary Americans who have real concerns about stuff with nutjob racists and anti-Semites.
There's one thing that's glaringly missing here. No discussion about the real terrorists, the Al-Qaeda cell groups and others that are located inside the United States.
It literally changes the entire focus where the Department of Homeland Security has been doing.
I was passed by an Oklahoma City police officer vehicle, and they slowed down, got in behind me, followed me for about 3 miles, and then pulled me over. When the officers approached my vehicle, they asked me if I knew why I was being pulled over, and I said no, I had no idea. And they said it's because of the sign in the back of your truck. And I said, my sign that says aboard Obama, not the unborn. And the officers said yes, that's why. Later that afternoon, I got a call from the Secret Service. They wanted to do a quick walkthrough of my house to make sure I wasn't some kind of radical racist.
Why would Americans, under the guise and the threat of worldwide terrorism, why would they willingly give up or relinquish their rights to government when our rights did not come from government in the first place? Our rights merely came from God, but they were enumerated by the government.
I know God. God is the fucking government, stupid.
But those in power as to not violate them.
I know the history of government, not just American government, but the history of government well enough to know that most governments acquire power and they do not like dissent. We are losing our freedoms in the United States. Most Americans do not realize that we have free speech zones in the United States. I mean, talk about an oxymoron. You know, all of the 50 states are a free speech zone. You're an American. That by definition creates a free speech zone. We have freedom of speech because we stand up and say what we think, not because the Founding Fathers ratified the First Amendment in 1791. So if we're losing the free speech zones, the governments in general throughout history have tried to quell dissent by controlling the media, which we already have in this country, and by generating fear of confrontation.
After Seattle, the feds said we can't allow protests anymore in America. It's too dangerous. That's why we're going to have free speech zones miles away from where the events are, in baseball fields and church parking lots where nobody can see you or hear you. You've got your First Amendment, but you've got it way over here miles away. That all started as a beta test in Seattle in '99 with the police, after they'd staged the riots, with hired anarchists coming up to people saying nowhere in the city could they even wear a pin saying no WTO. And the police said, hey, First Amendment is suspended in Seattle, and the news pushed it like it was a good idea and the right thing to do.
The lines are up, and this is First Word, ladies and gentlemen. At 877-367-2526. Whatever's in your head, call and share it at this moment. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Alan? My name's Austin from Florida. I was recently looking around on the Army's website, Army.mil, and I came across this document called the Civilian Inmate Labor Program. This was put out in 2005, and I was just like reading over the first couple pages. Just in the first couple pages, this document on the Army's own website talks about converting military bases and installations into giant prisons and establishing civilian inmate labor programs. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
This is on Army.mil. If you want to look it up,
Okay.
it's from
Another
2005.
conspiracy theory.
This is on the Army's website,
Yeah.
sir.
All right, so we're all going to be in prison, right? They're going to
Well,
prison.
I don't know, but I mean, obviously there's a document that.
Yeah, there are lots of documents in lots of places.
This is on the military's own website.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Army.mil.
Okay. I'm at Army.mil. Says the link's broken. There's no such Army.mil. Can you get to Army? I can't get to Army.mil.
Army Regulation 210-35. Now, this was set up in 1986 secretly, and for 10 plus years it was secret. And in 1997, Bill Clinton declassified this, and we were the first major radio show to cover it. Since then, it's been expanded. This lists 12 camps to hold American citizens that have been built by the United States Army. And ladies and gentlemen, some of these facilities have U.S. citizens in them now. But it's all being done administratively. To beta test the Army running camps, they did deals with the federal government and now states to take prisoners convicted in the civilian courts and to then stick them on U.S. military bases administered by the Bureau of Prisons but operated by the U.S. Army. So see, they're taking state and federal prisoners and sticking them under Army control and building these civilian inmate labor camps, all under Rex 84, right out in the open, and no media will ever touch this.
Media is straight up bullshit.
Beginning in October, the Army plans to station an active unit inside the United States.
Under NORTHCOM and under the new Homeland Brigade, it was first going to be 3,000, and then 20,000, and then 40,000.
The 3rd Infantry Division's 1st Brigade Combat Team has spent 35 of the last 60 months in Iraq.
Combat-hardened troops who've been running camps and centers in Iraq are now coming back to the United States to, quote, carry out law enforcement actions.
The Army unit may be called upon to help with civil unrest and crowd control.
There has been some concern and some misimpressions that I'd like to correct. The primary purpose of this force is to provide help to people in need in the aftermath of a WMD-like event in the homeland. This force has got no role in civil disturbance or civil unrest, any of those kinds of things.
The Army Times reported, quote, they may be called upon to help with civil unrest and crowd control or to deal with potentially horrific scenarios, end quote.
NORTHCOM, the Northern Command that came into being in October of 2002, when that came in, people like me were concerned that the Pentagon was going to use its forces here in the United States, and now it looks like, in fact, it is, even though on its website it says it doesn't have units of its own. Now it's getting a unit of its own.
And the Army Times said during civil unrest inside the United States that the Army's new job would be engaging the American people.
The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 generally prohibits federal uniformed services from carrying out domestic law enforcement duties, except in cases expressly authorized by the Constitution or an act of Congress.
They can't just come in and say, you know, I want to see everything in your car. I want to see everything in your house. I want to go through your computer. You either have to voluntarily hand that over to them, or they have to have probable cause and get a warrant to do that. So it's very clear that the government does not have the authority to be spying on us. That was not the intent of our founders when they created this system of government.
Over the last decade, we've seen the introduction and enactment of some of the most dangerous legislation ever to be conceived by our elected officials, who have not forgotten who they serve, but only now reveal to the American people, through the fruit of their own actions, that our rights and our freedoms are secondary.
You don't serve us, buddy.
The USA Patriot Act allows for American citizens to be picked up and incarcerated indefinitely without charges, and allows law enforcement to conduct warrantless and secret searches of Americans' property and possessions. The Military Commissions Act dissolved the cornerstone of our Constitution by removing the writ of habeas corpus, allowing the permanent imprisonment of enemy combatants, and disallowing petitions to the court to know why you've been locked up in the first place. Although never passed by the Senate, the Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism Prevention Act shows us the mindset of our leaders in Washington. If passed into law, the bill would make public demonstrations and protesting into an act of terrorism, and label the organizers as thought criminals and potential homegrown terrorists.
You need to live off all that eating.
Now that the federal government has the authority to speak, snatch, and lock up its own citizens, a new bill has been introduced by Congress that gives the feds a place to hold those outspoken dissenters and potential domestic terrorists. The National Emergency Centers Establishment Act, or H.R. 645, allocates military bases to be converted into FEMA emergency centers. It also mandates that these camps be built complete with public works, medical, and educational facilities, just like the Japanese internment camps of the 1940s.
Why is the media on one hand saying there are no FEMA camps, but on the other hand, legislation has been introduced to build them?
H.R. 645, titled the National Emergency Centers Act, directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to establish national emergency centers throughout the United States.
It's all being done for your own good.
The bill directs these camps to be built in existing military installations, whether operational or not, for the stated purpose of providing temporary housing and to meet other appropriate needs as determined by the Secretary of Homeland Defense.
Here's H.R. 645 legalizing what has already been developed, what's already been paid for by FEMA. And that is these FEMA camps for everybody's safety, these FEMA camps for everybody's comfort, these FEMA camps that the people need during emergencies.
The government doesn't build things that are not needed or that there aren't contingency plans that say there's a reason for them.
Also, it's been reported by World Net Daily that the Department of Homeland Security has already awarded nearly a $400 million contract to Halliburton to build some temporary detention centers on an as-needed basis.
We know this is their main attack profile, is old, shut-down bases. And so you go point them out and go, look, the barbed wire is facing in, or look, this is a designated FEMA camp. And they say, well, where are the people? Where are the people in the camp? The point is, it's a designated facility for that.
Conceivably, these are the kinds of camps that could be used for political dissidents, just like occurred in Nazi Germany.
I got a feeling in the next few years that you may start to see some American citizens end up in these camps for questioning the government.
The president can declare a national emergency, and it can be anything. It can be a hurricane, or it can be political protests or civil disorders like we saw in the race riots. I think the government's anticipating that there's going to be an increased reaction against the economic downturn, and this could lead to kinds of street riots and protests we've seen in countries such as France.
If we do not have a government which is controlled and limited by the Constitution, then our personal motives and preferences are irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you have freedom of speech if you're in a FEMA concentration camp. Yep. It doesn't matter. You're certainly not going to be allowed to have a gun inside a concentration camp. And all of our rights are predicated on a free America. And if we don't have a free America, all the other questions become moot.
don't these companies have a responsibility morally? If they're in there building camps and building shackles and building barbed wire, facing in to speak out, and say this is unconstitutional in the United States?
What they doing them? What they
Well,
got
of course
on
they
them?
do. But Kellogg Brown and Root was connected to some of the contracting that went on at Camp X-Ray, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. So this is their business.
I talked to the Department of Homeland Security spokespeople, and they affirmed the contract with this KBR, the former Halliburton company, was in place. The Department of Homeland Security was ready to build these contingency as needed detention centers anywhere in the country in the event of any kind of a national emergency, including natural disasters or, again, riots or protests.
Just because you think someone might commit a crime doesn't mean that they have done anything. And does not mean that you have the right to punish them for what you think they are going to do. You know, in our system of government, you're supposed to be innocent until you are proven guilty.
No.
Not guilty until you're proven
innocent, because that's what happened to me.
You can be declared guilty or potentially
That's what happened to me.
before you even lift a finger. That is bordering on thought crime. That is bordering on punishing people for pre-crime.
You ready for a trip? What do you have in mind? It's fine. Yep. Come back anytime.
I never understood these words before the thought police showed up at my front door. Liberty isn't something that we touch or feel or grasp in our hands. We can't taste it or smell it or hear it. It doesn't have a particular shape or size or color. It's intangible, elusive, and in constant need of nurturing, or else it withers and dies on the vines of tyranny.
Modern tyranny is a lot more sophisticated than the Hitlerian or Stalin-esque things we've seen in the past. But even in Hitler's day, they knew how to sell it. And they advertised the camps as, hey, look, people don't like you here in the Warsaw Ghetto. You're not allowed to have jobs. You're not allowed to work. Get on the trains. We're coming to take you to a safer place. You're going to be able to work, be amongst your own people. They put them on trains, took them to the camps, killed the old and infirm, worked the other people to death. And they advertised, hey, we're going to delouse you, we'll give you a shower, march you right in here.
Y'all kill me first. Bleed out. I ain't got no fear in death.
You have arrived at Sobibor. You are in Eastern Poland. This is a labor camp. We have brought you here to work. You will work hard, but hard work is good for the soul. So in reality, we are your benefactors. You will be housed, you will be fed. All we ask is your cooperation. You do your job, you will have nothing to fear. You will be given postcards, write to your relatives, friends, to tell them that you have arrived here safely. We will mail them for you. Unfortunately, there have been reports that typhus has broken out in several labor camps. We do not want typhus or Sobibor. Therefore, first you will be taken to the shower facility. You will each have a hot shower. Naturally, men and women will shower separately. Women will have their hair cut short before they shower. While you are showering, your clothing will be disinfected. Remember, the better your behavior, the easier your stay will be.
As they roll this system out, this total federalization out, They're selling it as if the FEMA camp is a place that the disadvantaged and the poor and the illegal aliens, as the economy collapses, will need to come, will need to stay. Now, in this more modern, sophisticated system, they're going to advertise the camps. They're going to show people getting a free concert, with a rock and roll star.
Yeah, they just not did it. They just 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 did it.
To have economic collapse that's fabricated. Okay, you cut lending from banks. Nobody has any money anymore. The economy tanks. We've got massive people homeless everywhere. Then there's a problem. With economic collapse. The reaction is people get desperate, need a home. The solution is we present the home to you. Which is the FEMA camp, which will be advertised as a wonderful place to lie. So what you have there is they fabricate a problem to create a reaction, which gives the solution they originally wanted in the beginning, which was to get everybody into the FEMA camps. That's our problem. This is the story of history. It's happened over and over and over.
Whole hour of this shit. Good show, this bullshit.
If you can detain people, I would call them quasi-concentration camps.
In 1999, American citizens were put in the Sandpoint Naval Brig outside of Seattle, Washington, and the news reported that FEMA was in control of the operation and was using the closed naval base as a mass prison. And the people were put in plastic handcuffs and taken indoors, inside warehouse areas that had barbed wire fences, porta potties, and cots. The same system we saw set up at Pier 57 a few years later in 2004 for the Republican National Convention in New York City.
Convention protest groups are not happy with what they call a clandestine detention center.
We discovered officers that had to spray tear gas to control one protester, and then at least 4 officers held down another protester.
The recent discovery of a makeshift jail in Denver's warehouse district is causing outrage among some.
It's a warehouse filled with makeshift jail cells to be used if there are mass arrests.
It was apparently constructed to hold DNC protesters.
Those cages are for the safety of law enforcement agents and those who are arrested, but Recreate 68 calls this place a concentration camp, unfit and inappropriate.
We don't need another gulag or stalag or prison, whatever you want to call it, to house people who just want to express an opinion of a better world. That's why we have the protest.
This lot sitting right next to where we're filming right now, it's fairly big, comprising several acres. That itself we readily turned into a holding area by virtue of some concertina wire, some observation guard posts, and a security ring. Doesn't take much. It can be a sports arena. It could be abandoned airports. It could be abandoned military facilities. Any place that you could set up a security perimeter could be used as a temporary internment camp.
Well, it's recording. We got a FEMA RV thing right over here.
I don't think
A security guard. Yeah, but why is a FEMA RV parked in front of the mall?
In front of the mall? In front of the closed part of the mall.
That's real weird.
Dude, look, it says Department of Homeland
It's the Department of Homeland Security parked in front of the mall?
In front of that closed part, though. You don't know, you can tell me that.
What kind of... Why do we need Homeland Security at the mall? Do we need Homeland Security right here? Look, it says it right there. That says U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And why are they parked in front of the mall?
Man, that's what I want to know.
What are y'all doing here?
We just
I just want to know. I want to know what y'all are doing here.
Step outside.
Will you tell me what's going on?
I will be more than happy to serve you. Step outside.
Sure.
Is there a reason you're doing that?
We just saw the FEMA camera. I thought y'all were part of some sort of emergency or what's going on?
Been shut down. Not the mall. The store had already been shut down. But
Is there some reason why FEMA's here?
in case I can't speak.
In case Mike?
I'm going to hold him if he's not.
Dude, you're just a security guard. I'm a security guard.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're part of an organization that is just making sure everybody understands what's going on these days. I don't understand why y'all are here, though. You still didn't explain why y'all are here.
Okay, just don't step.
So what kind of operations are going on inside?
How many men?
Just tell me what kind of operations are going on inside.
They built the temporary detention center. It's about 780 beds that have really made a difference. We still have a long road ahead of us, but FEMA's going to stick with us, and I know we'll make it.
It's a $37 million facility. It was built in Indiana. It was modeled off of a modern facility in Michigan. It originally was designed in the States and brought down here in sections, so we put it together like one big Lego piece.
Then people started noticing on the backs of flatback rail cars these little 1- and 2-person mobile concrete jail cells. And those indeed have been manufactured by the tens of thousands and purchased by the federal government and local governments. And they've been stockpiling on county, city, state, and federal land hundreds and hundreds and hundreds per site of these little mobile concrete jail cells. So there certainly is a buildup of that type of equipment.
Man, how y'all do that to the people, man? The police, y'all swore oath to serve and protect.
Several years ago,
and our soldiers are supposed to be there to help us if somebody try to attack our shores. Now you on our shores attacking the fucking people. What the fuck? How you allow somebody to brainwash you to be fucking puppets for them?
The system allows soldiers to lay hundreds of yards of wire from the back of a vehicle just in a moment.
This
is more of an action of a country that has gone absolutely berserk, that they feel that they would have to jail their own citizens, that the government would fear its own people so much that they would be...
Because when the government doing what they doing, they have to fear us, because what they doing is bullshit. Once we wake up, they got to be fearful.
So anytime that you can demonstrate the power of government, and you want to condition people into a way of thinking or to intimidate them or make them fearful, do actions that are going to put the fear of government and authority in people's hearts, strike that chord and make them shut up. Just when people in this country should be doing exactly the opposite, because I don't even recognize this country anymore.
We're a bunch of fucking pussies. No. We're a bunch of stupid fucking sheeple.
Military Occupational Specialty Internment Resettlement Specialist. This MOS plays an integral role in providing a uniform system of handling prisoners and detainees. Trained as internment resettlement specialists to control and supervise detainees to ensure their humane treatment. For this job, the Army will train you to use specialized equipment to monitor activity, to conduct searches, and to inspect areas where prisoners work and live. Here, you'll train to in-process prisoners and detainees, and to brief them on their rights. After your initial entry training and advanced individual training, you'll work long hours, day or night, in a garrison or field environment, where you may practice emergency procedures, detect and confiscate contraband, and escort prisoners outside the facility. Military Occupational Specialty Internment Resettlement Specialist.
The burden of service has fallen almost exclusively onto the backs of our military. And that's why I won't just ask for your vote as a candidate. I will ask for your service and your active citizenship when I'm President of the United States.
Citizenship is not an entitlement program. It comes with responsibilities.
A young person joining our military must know that we will only send them into harm's way when we absolutely must. We need to ease the burden on our troops while meeting the challenges of the 21st century. People of all ages, stations, and skills will be asked to serve. Because when it comes to the challenges we face, the American people are not the problem, they are the answer. We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
Everybody somewhere between the ages of 18 and 25 will serve 3 months of basic training and understanding in a kind of civil defense. That universal sense of service, somewhere between ages 18 and 25, will give Americans, once again, a sense of what they are to be American and their contribution to a country and a common experience.
We were taught, my brother and I, is that you have an obligation to give back. That's why community service has been such a big part of my life. Our troops need to know that we're making the same commitment to this country that they've made.
We're gonna spread happiness. We're gonna spread freedom. Obama's gonna change it. Obama's gonna lead 'em.
Since then, even the New York Times has reported
that they're training the Boy Scouts now with Homeland Security to, quote, take on disgruntled veterans and gun owners in, quote, seek and destroy operations. And they had photos in the New York Times of these kids dressed up in Homeland Security outfits going after veterans and gun owners.
Stalin said, give me somebody before the age 7 that can turn them into anything I want. So that's why there's this push. Get the kids into the school system. Get them to not follow evidence. Get them to only do as they're told. Get them to be little robots. Get them to think it's normal to march up in lines and act like little soldiers and so forth. And then later in life, they'll never know the difference.
Everybody has to get rid of the idea that they're an individual. They have to understand that we all have to work in the group for the collective, for the good of the whole. Not for the good of your child or for the good of the teacher, for the good of the whole. If you have to give up some of your most cherished beliefs, and that they have to train you to give these up, because it's going to be for the good of the whole, you give it up.
What this legislation does then is to help harness this patriotism and connect deeds to needs. We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
They've been turning on the American people and working against our interests for a number of years. And the people that you may be seeing that are going to be targeted to be put into these camps, these dissidents, these disenfranchised, disaffected people, the government would never, ever turn on the American people. They would never create a situation where they were so displeased with their government that the government may be forced to throw these people in concentration camps. They'd never do that, would they?
My name is Sam Ozaki. I'm a native-born American citizen, Los Angeles, California, along with about 120,000 other persons of Japanese ancestry when Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. We were all rounded up like cattle and placed into America's concentration camps. They had designated areas where people would report, and they were transported by bus to their, they called them assembly centers. They didn't have facilities to house 120,000 persons, so they took over racetracks, fairgrounds, places like that. Work in the camp was slave labor. In fact, they had us making camouflage nets for the United States Army. Now that was absolutely slave labor. Later on, I said we should all have refused to work and then let the Army and the government come in and do all the chores that had to be done. But as I said, we had lost all our, not only our life and liberty, but also our finances. You know, when you think about it later on, we were not much better than Hitler. On the other hand, we have to say that at least we were not gassed and murdered like the thousands that were killed, millions really, in Europe. Although I have to say that there were at least 10 persons shot and killed by American guards simply because they got too close to the barbed wire fence that was surrounding the camps. Native-born American citizens like myself were denied life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in total violation of all the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and so forth. Every morning the children would stand up, face the American flag with liberty and justice for all. You know, it psychologically, it really affected us. That's why, for example, I mentioned earlier on that there were many parents who never even told their children that they had been in concentration camps because they were ashamed. We should not be ashamed. It was the United States government that should be totally ashamed of their behavior and putting 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry in America's concentration camps. And you have to be alert because it can happen again.
if we look at American history between 1942 and 1947, the data that was collected by the Census Bureau was handed over to the FBI and other organizations at the request of President Roosevelt. And that's how the Japanese were rounded up and put into the internment camps. I'm not saying that that's what the administration is planning to do, but I am saying that private personal information that was given to the Census Bureau in the 1940s was used against Americans to round them up. I think there is a point when you say enough is enough to government intrusion. And you had mentioned this earlier, 28 pages. I have the survey right here, Glenn. This is the 28-page survey. This is the short form that every American will get next year. Does the federal government really need to know our phone numbers? Do they really need to know, like you said, the date and time that we leave, mental stability? You know the one question that's not on this survey, Glenn? Are you a U.S. citizen? I am just not comfortable with the way this census is being handled, with associating with ACORN, with the questions that are being asked, with Americans being compelled to give this information. How will this be cross-checked? Will it be held privately?
It's up to a $5,000 fine.
They're saying that if somebody who is connected with ACORN, now working for the U.S. Census, shows up at your door, knocks on it, and demands to know your race, your employment status, the name of everybody in your household, whether you've ever received food stamps, and your phone number, and everybody else's phone number, and you say, I'm not really comfortable giving that to you, you're going to get fined $5,000.
The United States government between 1942 and 1947 passed the Second War Powers Act. They used the U.S. Census information to round up the Japanese and put them in the internment camps. Americans were told that they wouldn't have their information used against them. They did.
So we got the internet now, so you don't do that. They got that information already. Oh, shit.
Well, one of the things that we're fighting here in Oklahoma City, we have a radio show called Radio Free Oklahoma, and we try to get the information out about the upcoming swine flu vaccines. You hear that Northcom is coordinating with FEMA to work for the mandatory vaccinations. There's all the legal framework in place through the Patriot Acts and the Emergency Medical Powers Act to force these vaccines on people. And then if you deny it, you know, where are you going to go? Well, they say that you can be charged with a felony or put into a quarantine area. Now it's starting to come into view how these camps could be used.
Yep.
Well, today we're in a circumstance where the economic and the political dynamics are pushing America and the whole world into a crisis dynamic. This crisis is being created through the process of sustainable development policy. Several things are occurring. One is that our system of justice is being changed. We're shifting from equal justice, where every human being has certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and property, etc., to a system of social justice where no one has any such right, but where people are judged based upon the group that they're part of.
Previously, there have been several reports, such as the MIAC report in the state of Missouri, but this is the first time that a report such as this actually named individuals. Once you label someone in a derogatory manner, an extremist, a potential militia member, terrorist, whatever term is used, for some people the moniker will remain. Before you can persecute people, before you can incarcerate large numbers of people, you have to marginalize them. You have to create the image that these people are dangerous to society, or they're extremists or radicals, call them what you will, but marginalize them from the mainstream of society so that at that point the rest of society will accept the persecution that might result upon this group. It's been an age-old strategy that's worked in every totalitarian regime in the history of the world, and that's why we're concerned here in the United States when we see this kind of marginalization going on about people who voted for Ron Paul or people who voted for Chuck Baldwin. Why are they being marginalized? Why are they being singled out as a potential danger to society. And I think it's shades of the strategies and tactics of totalitarian regimes in history past, and that should never happen in this country.
The people in Washington, D.C. haven't represented what was on the American people's minds for a long, long time. They are the most disassociated, discombobulated, disconnected people on this planet. And they necessarily had to do that for all the violations of the Constitution that they've done.
Just how far are you willing to go before you stand up and say no more to the federal government? Our founders actually intended for the federal government to be very small and limited, and that most of the service of government was to be done in the states. And so I think there's probably a growing conflict between states and the federal government. And I think there's some really good reason for the federal government to be concerned right now, because I think there are a lot of people in the United States that are beginning to say, where are we going to draw the line in the sand and say no more to the federal government? Federal government fucking full of bullshit, man, when you're looking at all the bullshit. God damn. God damn, meaning damn to the guys that doing this in
Every
these shitty
generation
ass mess.
faces corruption and is forced to stand up against it or become enslaved. Our ancestors fought and died so we had the little bit of liberty we have now. It is a sacred treasure. And from liberty comes all prosperity. The human race is depending on all of you out there that are seeing this information to educate yourself on the facts presented in this film and then to take action.
We've got to forget about Washington, D.C. I think Washington, D.C. is too far gone. It's a cesspool of iniquity. I think it's totally and thoroughly corrupt. It doesn't matter which party you put in charge of the White House or Congress, nothing of substance changes. I really think the power and strength of the people rests where it always has rested, and that is with the states.
So we need to start putting some teeth into our state laws, and we need to be electing sheriffs that are going to protect us from federal agents when they initially don't understand this because their civics lessons weren't very good in school.
The 10th Amendment very clearly says any authority not granted to the federal government by the Constitution belongs to we the people and the sovereign states that make up this union.
The states had all the power. They gave some few powers that are listed in the Constitution to the federal government and kept all the rest for themselves.
Well, my first guest works for the people of Oklahoma, and he's trying to do right by them. But he believes it's kind of hard to do that when the federal government keeps butting into the state's business. And now he's working to pass a bill in the state of Oklahoma that would declare state sovereignty from the federal government.
Well, the resolution is saying that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and that it specifically delegates certain powers to the federal government, and all other powers are reserved to the people and the states, and that the federal government has increasingly moved out of that framework over the last several decades, and that they need to get back into that proper role.
A number of states already have them. Many more are considering similar resolutions as a bulwark, proponents say, against the federal government handing down laws that they see as unfunded or unconstitutional.
Ongoing pattern of overstepping its constitutional authority.
Dozens of states are now considering resolutions asserting their sovereignty under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, pushing back against Washington's intrusion into everything from land use to gun control.
And there's really somewhat of an uprising in the states across the country is this federal law called the Real ID Act.
Texas appears ready to declare its sovereignty again. A resolution doing just that has the unabashed endorsement of the state's governor.
I believe the federal government has become oppressive. I believe it's become oppressive in its size, its intrusion in the lives of its citizens, and its interference with the affairs of our state.
The bill, H.C.R. 50, is currently in Texas's House. It reasserts the constitutional guarantee of the 10th Amendment.
We need to focus on our state government. We need to focus on our state legislators, the governor's mansion, the state Supreme Court, the sheriffs at the state and local level. All these agencies need to be the focus of freedom-loving people.
And if you do treasure the notion that your rights are unalienable, meaning imbued in you by our Creator, and you want to defend the American circumstance, the only way we can effectively battle the Agenda 21 protocol is to do it locally.
We have the checks and balances in the states to be able to maintain the freedom of our people.
You get involved in your local area, I mean, that's where you can affect the most change.
I don't know why we have FEMA. I don't see anything about a FEMA in our Constitution. I think it should be eliminated.
We're fighting tyranny. We're standing up for liberty. We're the good guys. We have the moral high ground on our side.
All you have to do is get started. Take that first step, and then you'll find that you get this momentum, and you can't stop it.
We are the government.
Do whatever you can to get involved and get to know what is happening in your state. Are they watching people in your state and sending information up to FBI and Homeland Security? Are you going to be profiled in a report issued by your state?
I do this because I love you people. I love you more than you love yourself. But I can't make you do nothing. You gotta understand and understand. You gotta get it for yourself. All I can say to you is the divine creator of you is in you, allowing you to be a creator too. You just have the life, the free will, and the choices to love or hate. You have to choose. I'm Mr. Glasses. The truth is the truth. Period. Fuck all that bullshit.
Text-to-speech unavailable here. Text-to-speech unavailable here.
tHE.
Text-to-speech unavailable here. Text-to-speech unavailable here.
tHE.
I couldn't read the comment, so it is what it is. But it is what it is.